Chapter 1421. Speak. Sichuan Emperor's anger flared up when he saw his subjects' demeaning expression. The Minister of War was afraid that the Assistant Minister of War would say something wrong and anger the Emperor again, so he immediately replied, "Your Majesty, although Lulan doesn't have as many soldiers as the other two countries, their true weapon isn't their people, but their poison. Especially those strange animals they keep around their soldiers. Some are poisonous birds, some are poisonous snakes, and none of them have ever been seen before. As long as they release those animals, our soldiers won't dare to approach them and will be defeated." Sichuan Emperor was slightly taken aback. He had ruled the country for so long, but he had never heard of using such a method to fight a war. Moreover, it was from a small country that he had never paid attention to. Sichuan Emperor was very unhappy at this moment. He felt like he was being suppressed by a small country. His anger didn't subside. Instead, it rose. No matter what method the other party uses, can't you think of a way? There are many things in the world that have a weakness. I don't believe that they don't have a natural enemy. The ministers looked at each other. They had thought of what His Majesty had said, but they had never seen or heard of those animals. They hadn't even been recorded in books. The Ministry of War had flipped through books for several days and still came up empty-handed. "Your Majesty, this humble subject has something to say, but I'm not sure if it's appropriate." The Minister of Works raised his head. Although his back was straight, his arms by his sides couldn't help but tremble, revealing his current emotions. Usually, this wasn't something pleasant to hear, but the ministers in front of him were shrinking their necks. They didn't have any way to deal with the enemy. Sichuan Emperor also lost the mood to reprimand them. He waved his hand casually. "Say what you want to say." The Minister of Works was afraid that he wouldn't have the courage to say it later. After hearing His Majesty's permission, he immediately said, "Your Majesty, we need people now. Can you ask the King of England to come back? He has many strange people under his command. They might be able to deal with the people of Lulan." After speaking, he immediately lowered his head. If he stuck his head out, he would be stabbed. He might as well say it directly. As soon as he said this, the hall instantly fell silent. It was as if they could hear their own breathing. After the Minister of Works finished speaking, the others lowered their heads even more. This was their inner voice, as well as that of the court's officials. It was just that they didn't dare to say it out loud. They were afraid that if they angered the emperor, they would never be able to rise again. Now that someone had spoken for them, they couldn't help but sigh of relief. At the same time, they were afraid of Sichuan Emperor's reaction. The Xian Emperor's face froze. He didn't expect that someone would speak up for Xiao Su when he started a rebellion. He couldn't help but be so angry that his lips trembled. However, he knew very well that Li Weiyuan's ability was not as good as his. That child, had too little experience in leading troops, so it was inevitable that she would be at a disadvantage. Half of the generals in the court were either involved in the Liang and Fu families' cases or were useless, and this war didn't happen before Xiao Su started the war. It also didn't happen after he finished dealing with Xiao Su. At this moment, Sichuan felt as if the heavens wanted him dead. He wanted to vent his anger on the Minister of Works, but when he opened his mouth, he saw a row of expectant gazes. He subconsciously shut his mouth. Now that the three countries were in an alliance, most of the generals in the court had been sent out. Many of the civil officials had been sent to supervise the army. In addition to those who had been imprisoned, there weren't many people left in the court who could be used. If he made trouble again, there would be even fewer people who could do things. Therefore, even though he knew that they were all here to persuade him, he couldn't punish them. For the first time, Sichuan Emperor felt powerless. He was the ruler of a country, but he couldn't do as he wished. It was really sullen. "All of you are dismissed. Let me think about it." Sichuan Emperor held his forehead, looking as if he didn't want to see them. The people who had escaped disaster immediately took their leave. However, before they left, the Minister of Works didn't forget to say a few more words that shouldn't be said. For the country and the people, your majesty, please think thrice before you act. I believe that His Royal Highness won't disregard the country and the world because of personal grudges. After saying that, the Minister of Works immediately slipped away. The others chimed in with a few words and also ran away. Sichuan Emperor sneered. They usually walked like snails, but now they were like dogs chasing after him. After everyone left, the energy in his body dissipated. Sichuan Emperor immediately collapsed on the back of the chair. He was like a fish out of water, constantly breathing. He didn't know what had happened recently, but his physical fitness had been very poor. He couldn't breathe after saying a few words. If he hadn't forced himself to hold on today, his officials would have found out. Now that there were internal and external troubles, if news of his serious illness spread, the entire Sichuan would be in chaos. The ruler was the pillar of the country. He couldn't fall. Chao Ji, bring the medicine. Eunuch Chao had been standing outside for a long time. When he heard the summons, he immediately pushed the door open and came in. Your Majesty, the medicine is here. Sichuan Emperor didn't say anything. He drank the medicine in one gulp and then exhaled heavily. This medicine tastes terrible. Your Majesty, good medicine tastes bitter. The imperial doctor said that you'll be cured after drinking it for a few more days. Eunuch Chao immediately handed over the candied fruit. Sichuan Emperor waved his hand and rubbed between his eyebrows with his fingers. His expression was very bad. Chao Ji, why does everyone want him to come back? Eunuch Chao had heard the conversation of several officials outside the hall before they left. Naturally, he knew who His Majesty was referring to. He hesitated for a moment before saying, Your Majesty, are you referring to His Royal Highness? This old servant thinks that it might be because of His Highness's title of war god. Victorious in every battle. Sichuan Emperor sneered. Eunuch Chao immediately shut up when he heard the frightening laughter. He didn't dare to say anything more. Sichuan Emperor laughed. We've already broken off relations. At this point, will he still help me? Even if he agrees, I'm afraid that he'll take the throne instead. Eunuch Chao wanted to nod vigorously. Even if His Highness didn't help His Majesty, he would help the common people. However, he knew that His Majesty didn't want to hear this at all, so he didn't dare to say a word. Let me think about it. Sichuan Emperor sighed faintly. Eunuch Chao felt that he seemed to have aged several years. At this moment, the young Minister of Works, who was still trembling with fear in the imperial study, immediately calmed down after bidding farewell to his colleagues and getting on the carriage. He seemed to be talking to himself to the air. Tell Prince Yi that His Majesty has wavered. I'll persuade him with the other officials. Don't worry, Your Majesty. The Minister of Works was someone that Xiao Ho placed beside the Minister of Works. On the surface, he worked for the imperial court, but in reality, he worked for Xiao Ho. After that, someone responded, and then there was no more sound. The Minister of Works smiled. In fact, His Majesty had long wanted Xiao Su to come back to help, but he couldn't bring himself to ask. He believed that as long as they tried a few more times, they would succeed. Let's go. Chapter 1422. In the evening, Chu Qingyan and Xiao Su had dinner with Mr. and Mrs. Chu. While they were eating, Mr. Chu suddenly asked, Will we be homeless if we stick a spring onion in the back? Everyone at the table was confused by his question. Xiao Su was the first to react. Why would you say that, old master? Mr. Chu rubbed his nose and said honestly, I heard someone say that many people are attacking our country today. They are saying that the warehouse country, the flower country, the building country, and so on. They are going to eat up Sichuan very soon. We are going to live a life of misery in the future. Chu Qingyan could not help but twitch her lips. Where did her father hear that from? It was one thing to use the wrong idiom, but how could he make such a sophisticated name sound so down to earth? Her father was so talented. Although Mr. Chu was telling the truth, Xiao Su could not help but smile. Mrs. Chu could not help blushing and hurriedly explained for her husband, "Your father heard it from someone else, but he can't remember it clearly. That's why he made a fool of himself." Xiao Su said it was fine, then turned to Mr. Chu and said, "We won't be homeless, and we won't live a life of misery. I can promise you that." Chu Qingyan really wanted to laugh, but since Big Ice Block had said so, she immediately stopped smiling and said to her parents in a serious tone, "Father, Mother, don't worry. We will protect you. Also, as long as you are here, anywhere is home." Mrs. Chu nodded happily. She had not misjudged her son-in-law. Her daughter was also very capable. She felt that her life was complete. Mr. Chu also put on a serious expression and nodded. However, he did not look handsome or serious for more than 3 seconds. Mr. Chu blinked and said to his son-in-law, "Stick a spring onion in the back. Do you need more people? The kind who can fight." When she walked out of her parents' tent, Chu Qingyan was still in a state where her body and soul were separated. It wasn't until someone bowed to them that her soul quickly returned to its original position. She strode forward and caught up with the person in front of her. Puzzled, she asked, "Big Ice Block, why didn't you refuse Daddy's request? It's rare for the old master to have something to do, and it's out of kindness. As a junior, I shouldn't dampen his enthusiasm." Xiao Su knew that she would ask such a question, so he smiled. "That's true, but why do you need him to defeat with spirit and ethereal?" Chu Qingyan asked a question that confused her even more. "Because the two of them have the most free time right now." "That's not what I mean." Xiao Su stopped and turned to look at her with a smile. "Do you think the old man can beat the two of them?" Chu Qingyan shook her head without even thinking about it. Xiao Su raised his hand and scratched her nose. "That's right. What's a better way to persuade people than to let them back down? Won't the problem be solved then? It won't dampen the old man's spirits and it will achieve its goal. Isn't it the best of both worlds?" Chu Qingyan couldn't care less about being teased. She thought that the big ice cube was right. Seeing him walk away, she couldn't help but raise her feet to follow. A thought suddenly flashed through her mind. What if Daddy really did it? However, this thought was quickly rejected by her. She shook her head and immediately ran towards him. When the two of them entered the main tent, there were already people waiting for them. Hualing and Turan bowed to the two of them. Then, without needing Xiao Su's instructions, Turan began to report. "So far, the Southern Sung army has taken down 5 cities. The Junlan country has taken down 3, and the Lulan country has taken down 3. The number is still rising and has affected nearly 20 cities. Right now, Li Weiyuan has split up with 200,000 soldiers to stop the Southern Sung army and the Junlan country. The 4th prince is leading troops to the Lulan country, but he still can't catch up to their speed of taking down the cities." Xiao Su frowned. He didn't expect the 3 countries to be so fast. Were they too weak or were the other side too strong? At this moment, Chu Qingyan couldn't help but ask, "The Lulan country has the fewest people. Why did they take down the same number of cities as the Junlan country? I remember that the defenses of those cities aren't weak. How did they take down 3 cities so quickly?" This question was exactly what Xiao Su was puzzled about. Hualing immediately whimpered, "Masters, you don't know. According to our brothers, those people from the Lulan country aren't easy to deal with. They carry poison with them. Once released, it can make people retreat without a fight. It's very scary." Poison. Chu Qingyan thought of the scorpions, centipedes, and cobras all over the ground. Her whole body itched. Although what she imagined was different from the poison in the Lulan country, at least the toxicity was similar. What kind of background does the Lulan country have? Chu Qingyan couldn't help but rub her arms. Hualing shook his head, his expression ugly. "Although we don't know much about it, it can be traced back to 100 years ago. Our Empress Dowager sent troops to take over the Lulan country, but halfway through, 100,000 troops never returned. They didn't leave behind any corpses. It's very strange. The Empress Dowager sent people to investigate for many years, but to no avail. It's as if these 100,000 people disappeared from the face of the earth. No one has seen them since. Could it be that those people were treated as food and eaten by poison? Chu Qingyan's face paled. This was already beyond the description of scary. Xiao Su's expression darkened. Huo Ling, have Water Spirit investigate the Lulan country. Huo Ling didn't delay and immediately left the tent. What's the news from the capital? Xiao Su asked. A while ago, the third prince used some tricks to make the Liang and Fu families fight each other like dogs. His Majesty was furious and imprisoned many officials. Now that the three countries are attacking, there aren't many people in court that can be used. The third prince's move is giving His Majesty a headache. Someone has already suggested that you return, but His Majesty is putting on airs. Although he said he would consider it, he actually wanted you to return long ago. He's just too embarrassed to ask. Now, he's borrowing someone in court to ask. When the time is right, he'll definitely relent. Xiao Su nodded. It was as he guessed. Oh, that's right. Master, this is the letter the third prince sent over. There's also a jade pendant inside. Turan immediately took out the two items and handed them over. Xiao Su took the jade pendant and played with it. He saw the word, thick, written on it. Confusion appeared in his eyes. This should be something that his third brother carried with him or had some special meaning. But why did he send this to him? Xiao Su opened the letter with confusion. After quickly skimming through the message, Xiao Su's furrowed brows immediately relaxed. This change made Chu Qingyan happy as well. What did the third prince write in the letter to make you so happy? Xiao Su reached out his hand in front of her. The jade pendant fell from his fingertips and the red thread was wrapped around his ring finger. Through the light of the fire, she looked carefully but couldn't find anything. She heard the person in front of her say, I was just vexed about the troops when third brother sent me a solution. 100,000 troops. Chapter 1423. 100,000. Chu Qingyan was stunned. Big Ice Cube, are you telling the truth? Of course. Xiao Su patted her little head and turned to give the jade pendant to Turan. Take it and go to Lion Ridge to find a man named Lin Meng. Turan was also shocked by the news. He took the jade pendant in a daze and didn't know how to react. I'll do it right away. After Turan went out, Xiao Su saw the little fellow reading his third brother's letter from top to bottom. Although there were only a few lines, she seemed to be able to see through them. He couldn't help but take the letter away and raise his eyebrows. Third brother's handwriting is so beautiful. Chu Qingyan was amused by his words. She glanced at him and said, Are you jealous? My big ice cube has become a big vinegar jar again. Xiao Su looked at her with disdain. What's there to be jealous about? If you want to appreciate calligraphy, just come and find me. How could he say that he wasn't jealous? Chu Qingyan said in her heart, but she didn't dare to tell the truth. Okay, you're not jealous. There's no smell of jealousy at all. Back to the topic. How did Princey get so many soldiers? Could it be that he had thought of? She didn't say the word rebellion out loud. She only mouthed it. Xiao Su read her lips and chuckled. That's not the case. Before the truth of the Luo family was revealed, I'm afraid these people were prepared for me. It was only then that Chu Qingyan recalled the fight between the two of them. She couldn't help but suck in a deep breath. Patting her chest, she said with some lingering fear, Fortunately, the truth is out. Otherwise, you would have to bear the blame. Maybe the emperor and the Fu family were the ones who tried to frame the Liang family. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so many coincidences that made third brother think that it was my mother and the Liang family who did it. Xiao Su's expression was indifferent. When he talked about the Sichuan emperor, it was as if he was talking about an outsider. Chu Qingyan nodded heavily. When it comes to framing others, no one dares to claim to be the best. She paused and sighed with emotion. Prince Yi's forbearance is admirable. He has kept a low profile for so many years and raised so many troops without being discovered. If he didn't have a strong willpower and a smart mind, he wouldn't have been able to do it. He was born with a weak constitution and had encountered so many poisons as he grew up. To be able to survive until now and even control a faction, such a person would be terrifying if he were an enemy. Fortunately, the two of them had not reached the point where they would meet on the battlefield. Which member of the imperial family is stupid? Xiao Su mocked. Those who can stay must have gone through inhuman training. The law of the jungle was the law of survival in this world. When she heard him say this, she couldn't help but think of what Big Ice Block had gone through all those years. She couldn't help but feel sorry for him. She reached out and held his fingers. Yes, a sword's edge is sharpened. My Big Ice Block is already a good sword out of its sheath. Now, it's time to collect the debt from those people. He didn't care about the past. He wasn't someone who would hold on to the past. However, when he saw the tenderness and love in the little fellow's eyes, he curled his lips and a touch of sadness appeared on his face. It was as if he was trapped in the past and couldn't extricate himself. If only I had met you earlier. Those years wouldn't have been so lonely. Chu Qingyan's heart was filled with sadness for him. When she heard what he said, her heart softened even more. She reached out and hugged his waist, patting his back gently as if she was comforting an injured child. It's all in the past. Besides, aren't I right in front of you? We have to live in the present. The pain of the past is the metal of our glory. There is always a price to pay for growth. Ayan is right. Xiao Su buried his head in her shoulder and smelled the unique fragrance of her body. He hugged her tightly with both hands and took advantage of the little fellow's tofu with peace of mind. Chu Qingyan didn't notice his little movements. After comforting him, she turned her attention to Xiao Ho. Big Ice Block, I still find it unbelievable that Prince Yi would give all his troops to you. I have to say, he trusted you too much. When we are alone, I don't like to hear you mention other men. So, I want to give you a punishment. Before Chu Qingyan could react, her eyes were occupied by a large black shadow. Her lips were cold and he had already pressed down on her. She felt very innocent before she sank into the abyss. She was talking about serious matters. How could the Big Ice Block bully her? Sure enough, within 2 days, Sichuan Emperor couldn't withstand the pressure and sent someone to deliver a letter to Xiao Su. The letter didn't mention anything about what happened before. It only tactfully asked him to temporarily put aside his personal grudges and fight against the enemy together. Not for the imperial family, but for the common people he had protected for so many years. Chu Qingyan read the letter and wasn't happy. Zhong Wuyan has something to do, Xia Yingchun has nothing to do. A leopard can't change its spots. Huling said with righteous indignation, for so many years, Master has suffered a lot because of this. If Master still follows His Majesty's orders, I won't be the only one who can't stand it. Everyone will feel aggrieved. After saying this, Huling secretly glanced at Master, afraid that he would be angry. Chu Qingyan nodded heavily. I agree with Huling, but we are in a dilemma. If we help, His Majesty will have our weakness. If we don't help, wouldn't our efforts be in vain? Although the army was resting at the foot of the mountain and looked calm on the surface, it wasn't that they didn't do anything. In fact, a large group of people had secretly moved. Xiao Su raised his eyebrows. Isn't that simple? Let him wait for 2 days. The letter seemed to be persuasive and emotional, but it was still the same as before, using responsibility to restrain him. If he easily compromised, then he would be letting down his years of suffering in silence and his brothers who had risked their lives for him. This time, he had to make the emperor correct his attitude and know that he wasn't easy to control. Even if he wanted to beg, he had to act like he was begging. The letter was sent out, but there was no reply. After 2 days, Sichuan Emperor's patience had been worn out. He fiercely slammed the memorial on the table and angrily said, this unfilial son, does he want me to put down my status and beg him? The emperor was so angry that the hall shook 3 times. Several ministers looked at each other and saw helplessness in each other's eyes. They all knew what His Majesty wrote in that letter. If they were the King of England, they wouldn't agree either. The country was in danger, but His Majesty was still putting on airs. What should they do? At this time, under the signal of the Minister of War, the Assistant Minister of the Ministry of War held the urgent military report and said with a dignified expression, "Your Majesty, the latest news from the front line, Luli City and Anqing City are about to fall." These words were like a basin of cold water poured over Sichuan Emperor's head. His exasperated anger was immediately extinguished. He raised his hand to cover his eyes and felt dizzy. His face was full of vicissitudes of life. He was unwilling to be humiliated but also helpless. In the dark, it seemed that something was gradually out of control. "Chao Ji, prepare the brush and ink. Let me write another letter." Sichuan Emperor's voice suddenly sounded old. Chapter 1424. Big Ice Cube, there's something I don't understand. Looking at the person drawing on the map, Chu Qingyan wanted to recall the meeting with the generals to discuss how to resist the enemy country. She suddenly remembered a question that she had ignored before and couldn't help but support her chin with her hand. Xiao Su looked up and motioned for her to continue. She immediately said, "Why would Junlan cooperate with Nansang? I remember that 5 years ago, when we passed by Junlan, we helped Gentleman Xing resolve the internal strife and let him sit firmly on the throne. Now that he's doing this, isn't he repaying evil with good?" Thinking of this, she felt that she had misjudged him back then. She had actually helped an ingrate. On the surface, he was smiling with you, but behind your back, he stabbed you. Xiao Su said disapprovingly, "The relationship between countries depends on interests, not relationships. Junlan experienced the rebellion of the vassals last time. In addition to the problems left behind by the previous emperor, the national treasury has long been empty. Water Spirit found out that in recent years, they have experienced drought, and there has been no harvest. Their national strength has declined, and they are no longer as strong as they were in the past. So when Junlan saw that we had good weather, abundant food, and the people lived and worked in peace, they coveted it. When Pang Huang proposed cooperation, it was exactly what he wanted. Otherwise, his troops wouldn't have come so quickly. He must have had this idea long ago." With his reminder, Chu Qingyan was able to piece together the pieces of her puzzle together to make a pretty good guess. Xiao Su nodded approvingly. When a country has reached the point where the people can't make a living, don't have enough to eat and wear, it's not surprising that they will do something. Chu Qingyan sneered. If we hadn't helped him back then, Junlan would have been split up by those vassals. Gentleman Xing wouldn't be here today. Xiao Su raised his hand and patted her shoulder. There are no eternal enemies, and no eternal friends. This is the imperial power. She pouted and nodded. Let's not talk about them. I have something to discuss with you. Go ahead. Xiao Su was a little surprised. Chu Qingyan giggled, hugged his arm and said coquettishly, "Promise me first." Xiao Su looked at her calmly, then pulled his arm out of her hand and wagged his index finger in front of her face. "You're trying to curry favor for no reason. It's better if I don't listen." After he finished speaking, he walked out of the main tent with his hands behind his back. Chu Qingyan made a funny face at his back. The big ice cube was too smart. However, she would not give up on this matter. After giving herself some encouragement, she immediately chased after him. She didn't believe that she couldn't convince him today. 2 days later. When Chu Qingyan received Sichuan Emperor's reply, only her howling cavalry, Lai army, and the beast horde were left in the camp. However, on the surface, it still looked like an army of 100,000. After reading the contents of the letter, Chu Qingyan snorted. I really should let the big ice block read this letter. Sure enough, he was a flexible emperor. After being ignored by the big ice block for a few days, he immediately changed his attitude. She had never seen such a shameless person. Although she knew that he was only saying this because of the crisis that Sichuan was facing today and was not sincere, he was an old fox. It was already very difficult for him to go this far. She couldn't force him to do anything. Otherwise, things would go in the opposite direction. Chu Qingyan said to Jean Xian, "Send the letter that His Highness prepared before he left back to the capital." Jean Xian obeyed the order. As early as when the news of the 3 countries' encirclement came, the big ice block did not intend to sit back and do nothing. He had already begun to deploy in private. He had already sent people out, but on the surface, he was biding his time and negotiating with the Sichuan emperor to force him to state his position. This was the difference between active and passive. It also meant that the big ice block was no longer the King of England who could be easily manipulated. So yesterday, the big ice block left in advance with 100,000 troops to the north, leaving her to guard the camp. Now her task was completed. At this time, Ethereal lifted the curtain and came in, respectfully saying, "Little princess, this subordinate has prepared the medicine for your injuries. We can set off now." Chu Qingyan heard and nodded. She took the helmet that Xining handed over and put it on. Then she walked out of the tent valiantly and stepped onto the high platform. Standing in the middle of the field, she looked down at her army. The Howling Cavalry and the Lai Army occupied half of the training field. Then there were Xiaohai and Bai Yutang, followed by a small team behind them. Chu Qingyan was solemn, "All teams report." Jean Xian stepped out with a serious face, "The Howling Cavalry is all here." Feng Lu stepped out and respectfully shouted, "The Lai Army is all here." Xiaohai stepped out and lazily responded, "Xiao xiao xiao xiao." Bai Yutang stepped out and howled to the sky, "Awu awu." If an outsider saw this scene, it would be hard to associate it with a military parade. They had never seen such a strange combination of troops. But it was this group of troops that would later write a legend. Chu Qingyan nodded in satisfaction and waved her arm, "Break camp and set off." The plains were instantly cleaned up. If one didn't look carefully, they wouldn't be able to see that there had been an army here. Little Sea soared into the sky, craning its neck and calling out loudly. Those eagles that were resting in the forest immediately flapped their wings and flew towards it. Immediately, a black mass appeared, as if dark clouds were gathering, causing people to feel a chill in their hearts. Bai Yutang and the other 2 stood on the hillside and cried out a few times. Rustling sounds could be heard coming from the mountain forest. Not long after, all the ferocious beasts that could be called out with extreme lethality appeared, following behind them in an orderly manner. It was hard to imagine that they would have such an obedient side. Chu Qing rode her warhorse and looked back in the opposite direction. She didn't know where the big ice block and the others were now. She didn't know when they would meet again after this parting. She couldn't help but think of the conversation she had with him 2 days ago. "Big ice block, leave the Lulan army to me," she discussed with him. "No." Xiao Su rejected without even thinking about it. She didn't get angry and said seriously, "Big ice block, you know very well that they have poisonous creatures. I have a herd of beasts. I have a better chance of winning against them." Xiao Su also stared at her seriously, "It's because they are poisonous creatures and not humans that you're not suitable to go. Beasts can deal with humans, but they have the same effect against poisonous creatures as humans. No, Bai Yutang and the others are more agile than humans, and they are smaller targets. They are also animals and won't have a fear of poisonous creatures like humans, so," Chu Qingyan looked up with bright eyes, "this time, it has to be me." Xiao Su was choked by her words. That's right, there was no better choice than the little fellow. In the end, he reached out and pulled her into his arms. He had never used so much strength before, as if he wanted to embed her into his bones. The 2 didn't speak. In the end, he took a deep breath and closed his eyes, saying softly, "Okay." That night, he pestered her and tore her apart again and again. He couldn't wait and was extremely passionate and domineering. She felt like she was a dish that he patiently tasted over and over again. When she woke up the next day, he was no longer on the bed, and there was not a single part of her body that was intact. It was clear how ruthless he was. Her thoughts returned to the army in front of her. She pursed her lips and gripped the reins tightly. It was a small separation, but they would be reunited soon. Her red clothes and black hair fluttered in the wind. She smiled confidently. Haya. Chapter 1425. Hayu City. Fourth Highness, the army can't hold on much longer. The enemy plans to attack with fire. There are trees everywhere. If the fire starts, it will be over. Time waits for no one. You have to plan quickly. Yanshi hurriedly ran over. At this moment, he looked anxious and desperate. Xiao Ran stood on top of the mountain. His arm was still bleeding, and the color of his robe could no longer be seen. Although he panicked when he heard the news, he was still calm. Have all the citizens in a 100-mile radius been moved? Yanshi lowered his head and knelt down with a bang. The soldiers sent to escort them were stopped by the Southern Sung army. Now that there's no news, I'm afraid that the citizens are also. Yanshi gritted his teeth. The Southern Sung army has surrounded the entire city. I'm afraid that they want to massacre the entire city. Xiao Ran couldn't help but take a step back. His face was full of shock. Then, he clenched his fists. His eyes were red as he gnashed his teeth. The Southern Sung army has gone too far. Not counting the soldiers, there were at least 100,000 citizens here. If the fire started, the consequences would be unimaginable. General Yen. Yanshi heard His Highness call out to him. Faintly feeling that there was something wrong with his voice, he immediately raised his head. This general is here. Let's fight it out with them. Xiao Ran's eyes were resolute. Yanshi immediately said, Fourth Highness, you must not. This general will stay behind to command. You must quickly leave with your soldiers. At this time, you cannot have any mishaps. The imperial court needs you. At this time, what's the use of saying these things? Go and pass down the order. I will fight with my back to the river. I will live and die with the army. Xiao Ran said firmly. Knowing that he had made up his mind, Yanshi sighed heavily. Then, he nodded and staggered away. Xiao Ran looked at the brightly lit battlefield again. Suddenly, he remembered the move he used against his brother a few days ago. He never thought that after going around in circles, he would be forced into a dead end by this move. At that time, he was eager to win and didn't care about the consequences. Only now did he know how great the price he had to pay. Half an hour later, when everyone had gathered in the main city, the Southern Sung army launched another attack. This time, they used fire to attack. Arrows with kerosene flew over the city walls and into the city. Below the city gate, more than 10 people hugged a thick wooden pillar and slammed it fiercely. Your Highness, they're about to attack. A deputy general staggered over with blood all over his body. After saying this, he fell unconscious to the ground. Xiao Ran pursed his lips, his eyes filled with anger. Yanshi, open the city gates and meet the enemy. If he stayed in the city, he would be burned to death. If he rushed out, he would be ambushed. Either way, he would die. However, he couldn't just sit and wait for death. A person could choose to give up, but he couldn't give up on a choice. He was fighting with his back against the wall. The city gates opened wide. Everyone held their weapons and rushed out. As if anticipating that they would make a move, the archers lying in ambush immediately fired a rain of arrows at them. Soon, the soldiers who ran in front fell one by one. Before they could even shout out, they had already died. Xiao Ran saw his soldiers fall without any resistance. His heart was filled with pain and anger. The sword in his hand mercilessly pierced towards the enemy. The more blood his hand was stained, the more his clothes were torn. Wounds appeared one after another, but he didn't care. At this time, he only wanted to kill these bandits who invaded other people's land. Pang Huang stood on a high slope and looked down at the battlefield at the city gate. The red-eyed Xiao Ran fell into his eyes. Pang Huang lightly exclaimed, "Who is that person?" Replying to the crown prince, "It's Sichuan's fourth prince, Xiao Ran." Someone behind him replied. Pang Huang suddenly understood. So it was him. He had fought a few battles with Sichuan, the commander-in-chief of the army, but he had only heard of his name and not seen him, just like when he was in the capital. But when his gaze returned to Xiao Ran, he shook his head. A faint trace of mockery flashed through his eyes. Xiao Ran and Xiao Su are too far apart. It's like the difference between heaven and earth. I don't know if the Sichuan emperor is blind. He didn't want such a good seedling and chose such a crooked melon and cracked dates. He's been an emperor for so many years in vain. How laughable. As he spoke, Pang Huang revealed a gloating smile. But it's also thanks to this muddle-headed emperor that we have the opportunity today. This is a good opportunity for us to destroy the Sichuan. Your Highness, do you think Xiao Su will help them? One of the generals was somewhat worried. Thinking back to the battle with Sichuan, he couldn't help but feel a chill in his heart. It was clear that Xiao Su still had some lingering influence. Pang Huang frowned slightly, but after some thought, he chuckled. Impossible. He was forced to this point, but he turned around to help. He's not a fool. He wouldn't do such a thing. He's already benevolent enough not to stab them in the back. Repaying evil with good doesn't exist in people like us. If he joins in and splits the Sichuan, perhaps the situation will become even more chaotic, making it easier for us to act. This crown prince doesn't intend to swallow the entire Sichuan, but no matter how much he eats, don't expect this crown prince to spit it out. Toli, who had been by Pang Huang's side all this time, laughed heartily and cupped his hands. Then this general congratulates your highness on your victory. Pang Huang's lips curled into a smile. He stood with his hands behind his back, facing the wind. From his vantage point, he looked down as if everything was under his control. These people were only stubbornly resisting. In another 2 hours, they would have no choice but to surrender. At that time, the southern blue flag would be planted in this city once more. Shouts of killing, banging on the door, and the clashing of weapons echoed in the air. However, at some point, there was another sound. It was the sound of horse hooves. As the sound approached, it became louder and louder. When Pang Huang sensed that something was wrong, his sharp gaze swept into the distance, only to see a black mass in the billowing smoke, rapidly approaching at a speed visible to the naked eye. When he saw what was coming, his face suddenly changed. Your Highness, there's a group of people moving in this direction. A soldier knelt in front of him, his voice urgent. Pang Huang didn't seem to notice as he stared at the person riding the horse in front of him. How could it be him? Below the city gates, the ground was dyed red with blood. Sichuan soldiers were sacrificed one after another. Xiao Ran led his men and fought a bloody path to protect the city gates. However, Yanshi dealt with the enemy that was preparing to ambush Xiao Ran. He quickly walked to his side and said anxiously, Your Highness, we can't hold on anymore. Hold on, Xiao Ran was covered in blood. It was hard to tell if it was his or someone else's. When he heard this, he felt a metallic taste in his throat. However, he forced himself to hold on. Just as he was about to give the order, he heard someone shout. The city has been breached. Xiao Ran spat out a mouthful of blood. His body swayed. If Yanshi hadn't been standing beside him and quickly supported him, he might have fallen to the ground. Your Highness, Your Highness. Yanshi immediately called out. In a flash, Xiao Ran raised his head. He saw a figure riding in the distance. The tall and straight figure on the horse's back was so familiar. Chapter 1426. The King of England. It's His Royal Highness. We're saved. We're saved. Someone in the crowd shouted. Immediately, there were people who cheered, and there were people who cried tears of joy. Xiao Ran was pulled back to reality by the cheers. He looked at the person who came through the fire and heard the voices calling him the savior. He suddenly felt a little mocking. No matter when, as long as his brother was there, he would be overshadowed and his presence would be extremely low. They were clearly his people, but in the end, they bravely killed the enemy because of his brother. How laughable. However, Xiaoran forgot that in this kind of situation where they were besieged on all sides, everyone had long since lost their desire to live. Now that Xiao Su's arrival had brought them hope to live, how could the soldiers not fight bravely? Fight for a chance to live. As soon as Xiao Su arrived, Wu Lin and Lu Weiyun, who were by his side, had already spread out and surrounded the southern Sung army in the middle, forming a situation where the mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. The cicada was the soldier that Xiao Ran led to defend the city, while the mantis was the army led by Pang Huang, who thought that he could take them down. Pang Huang looked at Xiao Su, who had caused him to lose many soldiers the moment he appeared. His eyes were filled with disbelief as he muttered, "How is this possible? How can it be him? Shouldn't he be thousands of miles away now?" Not only Pang Huang, but Xiao Ran also had the same question. After he came here, he specially sent people to inquire about the whereabouts of Xiao Su's army. The news he received was that they were still recuperating at their previous location. Suddenly, a thought appeared in his mind, and Xiao Ran was stunned by himself. Looking at Xiao Su, his eyes couldn't help but widen. Could it be that he used the same method as before? Had he quietly shifted his position? At this time, Xiao Ran was so shocked that he lost his composure. His eyes revealed too much information. Xiao Su and Xiao Ran looked at each other across the sea of people, but he quickly looked away. His younger brother was still too young. Everything was written on his face. How could he not be at a disadvantage when facing a cunning old fox like Pang Huang? No wonder this city was breached in less than 3 days. Fortunately, he arrived in time. Otherwise, it would be difficult to reclaim it. Previously, Xiao Ran could use those schemes to deal with him, so why couldn't he use them in reverse? Therefore, the older, the wiser. No matter how powerful the disciple was, he couldn't surpass the master. Xiao Su no longer paid attention to Xiao Ran. This was not the time to throw a tantrum. If Xiao Ran could not pull himself together, then he would be a hopeless ado, and it would have nothing to do with him. Xiao Su searched for Pang Huang's figure in the firelight. At this time, Pang Huang would definitely appear. Sure enough, Xiao Su felt a gaze staring at him. He turned his head and met Pang Huang's gaze. Pang Huang was not surprised that he would be found. War gods were born with keen senses, so it was normal for them to discover him. However, the fact that the other party immediately led his troops to charge at him when he discovered him caught Pang Huang off guard. He had sent all his troops to attack the city. Now, he only had a small team by his side. It was impossible to resist Xiao Su's menacing troops. Cover him. Because Xiao Su's arrival was too unexpected, Pang Huang didn't react for a moment. Only now did he come back to his senses. He immediately gave the order, and then someone brought over his warhorse. He jumped onto the horse and quickly left under the protection of the guards. It wasn't that he was afraid of Xiao Su. With his martial arts, he had no problem fighting Xiao Su one-on-one. But the key point was that this wasn't the time for a one-on-one fight. It wasn't wise to show off his bravado. When Xiao Su brought his men to the top of the mountain, he only saw Pang Huang's silhouette leaving with his men. "General, should we still chase?" Gao Hao asked. Xiao Su retracted his gaze and waved his hand. "No need. We will meet again sooner or later. Let's return to the city first." When they returned to the city gate, the fighting had already stopped. Only Wu Lin and the others were left cleaning up the battlefield. Ever since Xiao Su had brought his troops over, the southern Sung army had been caught unprepared, and the western Xian army's enthusiasm had soared. Being attacked from both sides, the southern Sung army had long been utterly defeated. When Pang Huang gave the order to retreat, Xiao Su's encirclement had not yet been formed, which gave the southern Sung army an opportunity. However, Xiao Su did not intend to destroy the southern Sung army. He knew that this was a hard bone to chew. He could not bite it in one breath. However, at this time, the city gate was closed. Xiao Su and his men were left outside the city. Your Highness, without your orders, this general did not enter the city after defeating the southern Sung army. However, I did not expect that the fourth prince would immediately close the city gates after entering the city. This action is too chilling. It's as if they are guarding against thieves. Too infuriating. Wu Lin had a straightforward personality. He directly voiced out his complaints. In any case, they were here to help. How could he use such a method to deal with his savior? This Xiao Ran was simply a vile person. Xiao Su glanced at the city gate tower. After the battle just now, the city walls were filled with traces of fire and smoke. It was obvious that the battle was fierce. Finally, Xiao Su turned his gaze to the top of the city gate tower. He saw Xiao Ran standing there, coldly looking at him. Xiao Su was not surprised. It was very likely that Xiao Ran had not received the news that he had promised the Sichuan emperor to fight the enemy together. Don't worry. Tell them that if they don't open the gate, we will fight our way in. Xiao Su did not have the patience to waste time with Xiao Ran. If they did not open the gate, he had many ways to enter. When Wu Lin heard this, he gladly agreed. He was not used to Xiao Ran. If Xiao Ran did not agree, he would have an excuse to fight his way in. At this time, Xiao Ran had just finished reading a letter sent by a messenger pigeon. His hand that was holding the letter trembled slightly. He didn't expect that his imperial father would really ask his imperial brother for help. He also didn't expect that his imperial brother would actually agree under such circumstances. At this time, Wu Lin's voice rang out. People in the city, listen up. If you don't open the gate, we will fight our way in. These extremely domineering words made Xiao Ran snap out of his daze. Their old friendship was gone. His brother did not give him any face and directly used the simplest and most violent method to deal with him. He secretly clenched his fist. His brother was really fearless. However, he did not have the ability to resist now. It was too powerless and infuriating. Yan Shi also knew the contents of the letter and was worried about the current situation. Looking at the silent Xiao Ran, he could not help but say anxiously, Your Highness, let's put aside our personal grudges and let them in. We are not their match now. If we force ourselves, we will only be asking for trouble. Xiao Ran closed his eyes. How could he not know? It was just that he had nowhere to vent his anger. Forget it, let them in. He compromised. With such a great disparity in power, he had no choice but to accept them. Yan Shi heaved a sigh of relief and immediately turned to send people to do it. Wu Lin waited for a while and was getting impatient. Just as he was about to roll up his sleeves and fight, a creaking sound was unexpectedly heard. Then, the heavy city gates slowly opened in the night. Chapter 1427. Xiao Su led his men into the city. Xiao Ran was the one who welcomed them. At this time, he was still dressed in a blood-red battle robe. Although he looked very disheveled, the arrogance on his face and the aura he exuded made people ignore everything else. Imperial brother, I just received a personal letter from Imperial father and knew that you came to help us. I have offended you just now. I hope Imperial brother and the soldiers won't take offense. When he met Xiao Su's eyes, Xiao Ran's expression suddenly changed. With self-reproach and guilt, he bowed slightly to Xiao Su and the generals behind him. Xiao Su raised his eyebrows and looked at him noncommittally. Only then did the generals behind Xiao Su restrain their dissatisfaction. Since Xiao Ran had said so, it was not good for them to show it. However, anyone with a brain knew that his self-reproach was fake. His goal was to appease the troops. When the soldiers guarding the city saw that he had rejected their reinforcements, they already had objections in their hearts. They were also dissatisfied that they had been rejected. If Xiao Ran did not do something, they were afraid that when the time came, not only would their own people be at odds with them, they would also not let him go. Xiao Su responded indifferently. After the brotherhood was gone, there was no need to be polite. Except for his own people, Xiao Su had always been cold and indifferent. It was not targeted at others. As a proud son of heaven, being ignored like this made Xiao Ran a little angry. However, he knew that he had to focus on the overall situation at this moment. The hands hidden in his battle robe subconsciously clenched, trying to restrain his anger. Then Imperial brother, please come this way. Xiao Ran raised his hand and invited. Xiao Su had already dismounted and handed the reins to Turin. He turned around and looked at Xiao Ran indifferently. There is no need to entertain me. You just need to allocate a place for this king's troops to rest. If you want to discuss business, send someone to pass on the message. Xiao Ran pursed his lips in the face of his brother's distant attitude. In the end, he nodded and ordered Yan Shi to bring them over. At this moment, a deputy general hurriedly ran over. Fourth Highness, we still haven't found the batch of commoners that were sent out. Xiao Ran was shocked. It was not only the common people, but also his 10,000 soldiers. At this time, Xiao Su stopped and turned to look at him again. His expression was even more indifferent. This prince saved those people on the way here. Xiao Ran was stunned. Only then did he remember that the direction he had escorted the people out was the direction his imperial brother had led the army from. Although he was relieved to know that the group of people were safe and sound, the person who had saved them was the person in front of him. He felt a little uncomfortable in his heart and did not want to owe him any more favors. He felt that he was inferior to him again. Xiao Su didn't pay attention to Xiao Ran's conflicted look. He clasped his hands behind his back and said coldly, Xiao Ran, if you had such a worried heart, you wouldn't have attacked with fire without considering the consequences and destroyed 3 villages for nothing. After saying that, Xiao Su did not look at his brother's expression and directly turned to leave. Xiao Ran was stunned on the spot. He stared blankly at his back. His silver battle robes fluttered in the wind. His figure was tall and straight, as if he was living an indomitable spirit. Xiao Ran had never felt so defeated before. Pang Huang returned to the camp. Although he had successfully escaped danger, the way he came back was very embarrassing. It could be said that he had fled in defeat, which damaged his dignity. He could not accept it. After gloomy for a long time in the main tent, he slowly exhaled a turbid breath. Although his complexion had improved a lot, his eyes were still gloomy. Tori. This general is here. Tori quickly stepped forward and responded. What orders does your highness have? Pass a message to Xiao Su for me. After Pang Huang said that, he whispered a few words. Tori was a little hesitant after hearing this. Your highness, do you think Xiao Su will agree? He has already fallen out with Sichuan emperor. I believe that this time he only acted because of the cold. If we give him some benefits, do you think he will still stand on Sichuan's side? Pang Huang let out a light breath, his expression not as ugly as before. He leaned back in his chair and raised his hand to rub his aching head. Tori felt that the crown prince's words made sense. That's right, us generals hate to be suspicious and have a fierce temper. The things that Sichuan emperor did to Xiao Su are enough for a general to draw his sword. This general will send someone to do it. Alright, let's do our best to invite him out. This crown prince doesn't believe that Xi Xian can escape our meticulous plan this time. Pang Huang smiled coldly. His eyes flashed with a determined light. The moon set and the dawn was dark. Slowly, the sun rose. On the other side, it had just drizzled and the air was a little moist. As they passed through the tall grass, they would occasionally be soaked by the rainwater on the branches and leaves. Tens of thousands of beasts rustled as they moved forward, not making a single sound. They were as orderly as humans. Among the beasts, a group of nearly 10,000 people walked quietly, vigilantly observing their surroundings. The leader was a woman with black hair and a red battle robe. Her face was cold and beautiful, and her body exuded a kind of intimidating aura. This person was none other than Chu Qingyan, who was leading a group of soldiers. At this time, they were about to enter the Lulan Kingdom's surveillance range. In order to prevent the enemy from discovering their tracks, they had made preparations in advance. They had chosen the most secluded barren mountain, but it was also the fastest direction. However, the journey was very difficult. While they were resting, several soldiers were bitten by snakes. Ethereal was treating them. At this time, Chu Qingyan also walked to their side to check on them. "How are your injuries?" "A few were bitten by snake venom, but it's not a big problem. I have the antidote here. Later, I'll get someone to pick some herbs for everyone to carry with them. Those poisonous snakes and insects won't dare to come close." Ethereal helped to bandage their wounds and smiled at her, indicating that she didn't have to worry too much. Chu Qingyan nodded. They were about to face the Lulan Kingdom, which was adept at dealing with poisonous creatures. If they died here before meeting anyone, it would not be worth it. What's more, she did not want her soldiers to be scared off by these poisonous snakes and insects. If that happened, wouldn't they be even more afraid of walking in the face of these poisonous creatures? However, she had to admit that the fierce soldiers that Big Ice Cube helped her pick were a group of geniuses. Not only did they not make a sound after being bitten by a snake, but they also directly dismembered the snake and roasted it. Moreover, they didn't make a sound along the way. This made Chu Qingyan very satisfied because they didn't have much time left. They had to get to the front line as soon as possible. This mountain is very barren. There are no signs of people and no mountain paths. It's like it hasn't been developed. Ethereal finished bandaging the last soldier and walked to her side. She pointed at the gray patch of cattail grass in front of them. Chu Qingyan said with a smile, "There are no roads in the world. When many people walk on them, they become roads. Little Princess Consort is right." Ethereal nodded. Just as she was about to say something, there was a sudden commotion in front of them. Then, they heard the howls of wolves and tigers. Chu Qingyan's expression changed slightly and she immediately stood up. Chapter 1428. What's going on? As soon as Chu Qingyan spoke, someone immediately came to report. Su Wu's face was serious as he reported, "Master, there are two people in front. Let's go and take a look." Chu Qingyan walked forward. Ethereal also followed behind her. Before his master left, he had told him to stay close to the little princess consort. The Lulan Kingdom was rich in poisons, so he must not let the little princess consort fall into their trap. When Chu Qingyan walked under the tree, she saw an unconscious old woman and a 16 or 17-year-old boy who was hugging her tightly and looking around in panic and vigilance. Their clothes were ragged, as if they had just experienced a disaster. Their bodies were black and she couldn't see their original appearance. Su Er stood at the side and watched the two. When he saw his master coming over, he didn't wait for her to ask and took the initiative to whisper, "Master, this is a mother and son who fled from Raohizhou. In order to avoid being discovered by the Lulan army, they took this route. This subordinate has already checked their identities, and it's true." Chu Qingyan's frown eased when she heard this. "It's good that they're not spies from Lulan." "Who are you? Why did you capture us?" "We have no grievances or grudges, let us go." No matter how the boy shouted before, no one paid attention to him. Now that he saw how respectful everyone was to Chu Qingyan, he guessed that she was the leader here and immediately mustered up his courage to question her. Unfortunately, his trembling voice revealed his emotions. He was scared and helpless. Chu Qingyan turned to look at him and smiled faintly, "Don't worry, we won't hurt you." This boy could still remain calm in the face of such a situation and protect his mother. This made her admire him a little, so she comforted him with a few words. Then, she turned to tease Ethereal. "Ethereal, aren't you going to pick herbs? Su Wu and the others are also here. Call a few of them to help you. You don't have to stay by my side. Don't always take your master's words as an imperial edict. I'm not a child." Among her howling cavalry, there were a few who knew a little about medicine. Ethereal couldn't help but laugh. Seeing that they were just ordinary citizens, he nodded. Young Consort is right. This subordinate will go now. The youth was still glaring at Chu Qingyan with a guarded look, but when he heard that the person beside her knew medicine, his face lit up and he immediately knelt down, kowtowing to Chu Qingyan. Miss, please save my mother, I beg you. Chu Qingyan and Ethereal exchanged glances before turning to the frail young man. What happened to your mother? My mother was poisoned. She has been unconscious for a day and hasn't woken up. The young man sobbed. Ethereal nodded at his little princess consort, then stepped forward and asked, Why was your mother poisoned? What kind of poison is it? The young man raised his head to look at the people surrounding him. Although his eyes were filled with tears, he was still guarded. However, he realized that if he didn't tell the truth, these people wouldn't save him at all. Thus, he gritted his teeth and kowtowed to the ground. We are from Rao Hizhou. A few days ago, the people of Lulan invaded our town. When this humble one saw that the situation was bad, he took my mother and fled. But we didn't expect to be bitten by venomous insects on the way. Those venomous insects have never been seen before. It's too scary. My mother is still unconscious. Miss, I beg you, please save my mother. I'm willing to be your slave for the rest of my life. He could tell that Chu Qingyan was the one in charge, so he kowtowed to her again and again. Chu Qingyan's eyes lit up. This was most likely a venomous insect brought from Lulan. She didn't expect to encounter it here. This time, she could let Ethereal see if this poison could be cured. At the same time, she could also understand what kind of poison it was. Only by knowing yourself and your enemy can you win 100 battles. Otherwise, she would be in the dark. Ethereal's eyes also showed interest, and she nodded at her. Seeing that he was about to break his head from kowtowing, Chu Qingyan raised her hand to comfort him. Let Ethereal take a look at your mother first. Whether or not she can be cured depends on the diagnosis. We can't guarantee anything. She had to say the ugly words first. Otherwise, she might not be able to cure her even if she gave hope. Ethereal agreed. That's right. Lay your mother flat first so that I can treat her. Hearing this, the young man nodded gratefully. After wiping away his tears, he let go of his mother. Because the young man had been protecting his mother in his arms, they couldn't see her face. Now that the young man lifted the cloth covering his mother's face, they saw that her face was so swollen that it was impossible to see her face. Her eyes were only a slit. Chu Qingyan was shocked. Originally, she thought that this ant was just fat. She didn't expect that her whole body was swollen. Moreover, her skin was a strange red color, which was very terrifying. Ethereal didn't say anything. She immediately went forward to check, and the silver needles between her fingers quickly pierced into the ant's acupuncture points. When she took them out again, the silver needles were actually glowing with a black light. Even Ethereal, who usually didn't change her expression easily, showed a look of disbelief. How is it? Chu Qingyan walked closer and asked. Ethereal shook her head and continued to take the ant's pulse. Then, a row of silver needles appeared in her hands. Her fingers moved slightly, and she inserted them one by one. She then wiped the sweat on her forehead, stood up, and replied with a serious expression, This ant has been poisoned by a scorpion. Although the poison is very strong, this subordinate can still cure it. However, if we delay it for another half a day, this ant's life will be in danger. The young man at the side kowtowed even louder. I beg you, I can give you my life. Please save my mother. Chu Qingyan raised an eyebrow. Give me a reason to save her. When Ethereal saw this, he immediately retreated behind his little princess, looking like he would only listen to his little princess. Hearing this, the young man's face paled. These people didn't know him, and he was penniless. How could he convince them to save his mother? Chu Qingyan's eyes turned cold. Why should I save someone like you who is full of nonsense? The young man's legs turned to jelly. He raised his head in shock and met that pair of beautiful, penetrating eyes. His entire body trembled. Just now, this young girl had looked very easy to talk to. He didn't expect that she would change her expression so quickly. When Ethereal saw that the young man was frightened by his little princess, he couldn't help but feel amused. He reminded him, "If you don't tell the truth, my little princess will lose her patience and leave you all behind." After hearing this, the young man's body trembled even more. He didn't dare to hide the truth anymore and quickly said, I'll tell you. We escaped after being locked up by the Lulan army. There were many commoners who were locked up with us. Because they wanted to feed our blood to those monsters, I took advantage of the fact that they weren't paying attention and escaped with my mother. However, my mother had been fed to the monsters once, so the poison took effect halfway through. I'm telling you the truth, I beg you. They didn't expect that those poisonous creatures needed human blood to survive. Chu Qingyan and Ethereal felt chills run down their spines when they heard this. Ethereal asked, "Why are you lying to us?" The young man sniffled and boldly pointed at Su-yi and the others. Then, he pointed at the snow wolves and tiger stools that were glaring at him. Your people have strange things painted on them, and there are so many ferocious beasts following you. I'm afraid that you are bad people too. Ethereal looked at Su-yi and the others. Their bodies were painted with the same color as Ye's. Their little princess consort said that this was easy to disguise and wouldn't be easily discovered. Glutinous Rice Ball and the others were his little princess consort's pets. They had been together for a long time and were already used to them. However, in the eyes of ordinary people, they were terrifying existences. It was no wonder that the young man was afraid. We're not bad people. Then who are you? We're here to save you. Chapter 1429. The young man's eyes widened as he digested this shocking information. Are you really here to save us? Su-er, who was beside him, laughed and joked, if we're not here to save you, why would we come here? The young man was overjoyed when he heard this, but his head soon drooped. But those people are very powerful and cruel. Can you deal with them? Su-wu shook his head and smiled. If we don't have the ability, why would we rush to our deaths? Young man, open your eyes and look at who is standing in front of you. The young man looked in the direction of Su-wu's finger. It was the girl who was so beautiful that he couldn't take his eyes off her. The young man muttered, I don't know. Do you know the god of war, the King of England? This is my lord's princess consort. The young man was so shocked that he couldn't speak. You're the wife of His Royal Highness who has never been defeated in 100 battles. After receiving Chu Qingyan's acknowledgement, the young man was even more excited than before. He was wild with joy and muttered to himself, we're saved, we're saved. Chu Qingyan was speechless. Was this young man scared out of his wits by the Lulan army? She shook her head and didn't let her people scare him anymore. She turned around and ordered Ethereal to treat the ant. I've already forced the poison to one part of her body. As long as she bleeds once a day for 3 days, along with this Qingqi pill, the poison will be removed from her body. Ethereal explained as he bled. Chu Qingyan nodded and said to the young man, have you seen what the poisonous creature that bit your mother looked like? Have you seen any other poisonous creatures? The young man nodded hurriedly. Yes, I've seen several kinds of poisonous creatures. Good, you tell Ethereal. He needs to know about these. Chu Qingyan pointed the young man to Ethereal. Hearing this, the young man's face showed a troubled expression. But I don't recognize any of those poisonous creatures, and many of them look very strange. Chu Qingyan and the others frowned. They already knew that the Lulan army didn't raise ordinary poisonous creatures. Now that they heard it, their hearts sank. What should they do? The young man's eyes suddenly lit up. Although I can't explain it clearly, I can draw it. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but smile. That's good. Su Tu immediately went to prepare the ink and paper. Seeing that there was nothing else for her to do here, Chu Qingyan gave Su Wu a few instructions and left with her men. Because the pigeon's flying speed was too slow, she and Big Ice block. Because. Jean Xian, what do you think His Highness is doing now? Chu Qingyan whispered. Jean Xian stood behind her. He knew that his master was thinking about His Highness. He couldn't help but comfort her. His Highness must be killing the enemy in the front line. It's been raining these days. Maybe the pigeon was delayed on the road, or maybe His Highness was too busy to send a message. Chu Qingyan nodded. You're right. The people around him are not to be trifled with. He will be safe. Then he will drive Southern Blue out. It's only been half a month, but she was already reluctant to part with him. She really hoped that this war would end soon. Thinking of this, her face became serious. Jean Xian, give the order. We will set out in 2 hours. Try to reach Raohe province before the sun rises tomorrow morning. Yes. The south was the furthest from the place they had set out from, so it would take them a lot of time to reach there. The south was the most prosperous. The Lulan kingdom had probably coveted it for a long time. Occupying a city was enough for them to plunder. That was why their attack speed was the slowest among the 3 kingdoms. That was why they had enough time to reach there. However, they couldn't delay any longer. These people were too crazy. They actually captured civilians to feed those poisonous creatures. Thinking of this made her blood boil. These people were simply unforgivable. At this moment, Ethereal walked towards her. She restrained the anger on her face and asked, "How is it? That auntie has woken up. Her life is not in danger." Ethereal smiled. That's good. If you can cure other poisons as well, then our chances of victory will increase. She knew that the poisons cultivated by the Lulan kingdom were not ordinary poisons. Ethereal was able to cure them because he was an expert in this field. It wasn't that these poisons were easy to cure. Furthermore, they needed to be fed by humans. They weren't anything good. I learned about the poison just now by chance. I can't guarantee anything else. Ethereal was also a little worried. The scorpion poison was already extremely potent. He didn't know how the other poisons would be like. Chu Qingyan was deep in thought. Shiwu came over with a paper with a strange expression on his face. Master, Kong Feng has finished drawing part of it. I brought it over first. Ethereal received Chu Qingyan's signal and stepped forward to take it. When he saw what was drawn on the paper, his expression suddenly became a little strange. Chu Qingyan saw that both of them had strange expressions on their faces. She couldn't help but reach out and say, "Show me one." She wanted to see what kind of strange things were drawn in there. In Haiyu City. Master, Water Spirit sent a message saying that the old man is missing. Turan hurried over, holding the letter he had just received from the messenger eagle. Xiao Su was flipping through the file. When he heard this, his expression darkened. What's going on? Didn't father and mother return to Lianqing together? How could he be missing? He took the letter and skimmed through it. It said that on the way back to Lianqing, the old man said that he needed to relieve himself and went into the forest. Then, everyone waited for a long time but didn't see him come back. When they went back to look for him, he was already gone. Moreover, there were no traces of wild beasts around, so the possibility of him being captured was ruled out. It was very likely that he got lost on his own. Because they walked quickly, the messenger eagle couldn't find them. Xiao Su looked at the date on the letter. It was already 10 days ago, which means that the old man has been missing for nearly half a month. Water Spirit said that she didn't dare to tell the young princess and asked if you should inform the young princess. Turan asked worriedly. Where could the old man go in this chaos? Xiao Su frowned and thought for a while. Don't tell Ian yet. Ask Water Spirit to send more people to increase the search. No matter what, we must find the old man. Turan nodded heavily and immediately ran out. Xiao Su leaned against the back of the chair and rubbed his brows. He hoped that the old man didn't have any accidents. At the same time, in the army that Xiao Su had brought, a figure wearing a soldier's uniform was wandering around where they were stationed. He was holding a steamed bun in his hand and munching on it. "Uncle Chu, there's water here. Come and drink it." A young man waved at the wandering man. When the man heard this, he immediately threw the steamed bun aside and jogged over. He snatched the bowl from the young man's hand and gulped down the water. The young man looked at the empty bowl in his hand and couldn't help but find it funny. This Uncle Chu was like a child. He didn't know how he was recruited into the army. When the young man continued to draw water, the man called Uncle Chu rubbed his chin and smiled slyly. Chapter 1430. In the grass forest, Chu Qingyan held the drawing and widened her bell-like eyes. She couldn't help but twitch the corner of her mouth. Where did this monster come from? She had lived for 2 lifetimes, but she had never seen such a strange creature. But she had to admit that Kong Feng's drawing skills were really amazing. He vividly reconstructed those poisonous creatures, just like how the modern police use drawings to reconstruct criminals. "Little princess, I didn't expect that the person we randomly picked up is such a talent." Ethereal rarely saw someone with such superb drawing skills, so she couldn't help but praise. "Do you think that talents are so easy to pick up?" Chu Qingyan couldn't help but tease. Then she thought for a while and asked Shiwu to bring Kong Feng over. Kong Feng came very quickly. Maybe it was because he knew that his mother's poison was almost cured, so he felt relieved. When he saw Chu Qingyan, he immediately knelt down to thank her. "No need to be so polite. Get up." Chu Qingyan raised her hand. The young man in front of her had been groomed, revealing his original delicate appearance. He was only 15 or 16 years old, but he was already handsome. She couldn't help but sigh in her heart. It seemed that she had picked up not only a talent, but also a beautiful young man. She didn't beat around the bush and went straight to the point. "Have you learned how to draw?" Kong Feng nodded. "My father was a teacher in a private school. He taught students how to draw. I grew up with my father and was influenced by him, so I know a little bit." These words were modest. These drawings couldn't be drawn with just a little bit of knowledge. Moreover, this famous painter might not be able to draw such a realistic picture. Seeing that Chu Qingyan was still holding on to his drawing, Kong Feng scratched his head in embarrassment and said, "If I were to use normal drawing methods to draw these poisonous creatures, I'm afraid that I would not be able to tell. Thus, I added some of my own ideas and even used some of your paints to make it easier for you to identify them. I hope that my drawing is not good enough, please forgive me." On the side, Kong Ling waved his hand and said with a smile, "Little brother, you're too modest. These maps of yours have helped us a lot." Chu Qingyan nodded and looked at Kong Feng while Ethereal was talking. His drawing skills were a bit like modern color paintings. If it was in modern times, it wouldn't be surprising, but this was ancient times. She couldn't help but think more highly of this person. His ideas were very novel. The ancient people were really smart. No wonder they could invent so many things. Kong Feng was very embarrassed by Ethereal's praise. As if he was encouraged, he ran back, saying that he would draw all the poisonous creatures today. Chu Qingyan and Kong Ling looked at his impatient figure and couldn't help but smile at each other. He was indeed a child, but it was obvious that he was sincere. "Can you recognize them?" After Chu Qingyan's words, Ethereal's face, and Ethereal's mouth. She couldn't recognize the poisonous creatures, but that didn't mean that Ethereal couldn't. He was an expert in the study of poisonous creatures and had dealt with many poisonous creatures since he was young. Ethereal didn't disappoint. His expression became serious as well. He pointed at one of the drawings and explained, "This is a double-headed centipede. It's more poisonous than the scorpion poison that Kong Feng's mother suffered from, but it's much bigger than what was recorded in the medical books." With that, Ethereal changed to another drawing and explained, "This is a yellow worm. Although it's not very poisonous, once it comes into contact with you, your whole body will itch. This itch comes from the bones. In the end, the injured can't stand the itch and most choose to end their own lives. Moreover, this worm has a very strong reproductive ability. It lays eggs every month. Ethereal then picked out a few more creatures and explained. Chu Qingyan's expression became uglier as she listened. It was clear that these were all poisonous and terrifying creatures. Due to some special breeding methods in Lulan, these creatures were larger than their normal counterparts. They looked very vicious and disgusting. Do you have any ideas on how to deal with them? Chu Qingyan pursed her lips and asked solemnly. Ethereal frowned and pondered for a while before replying, I don't have any special ideas at the moment. However, animals are generally afraid of fire. I think these are the same. It's just that it's not easy to deal with them. These poisonous creatures were raised by the Lulan soldiers and were not fed together. Therefore, it would be difficult to eliminate them all at once. It was also too risky to attack them one by one. Once exposed, they would be easily attacked by a group. She also considered Ethereal's concerns. She thought for a while and finally said, let's go to Rauhezhou first before making any plans. Ethereal felt that this was the only thing they could do for now. After hurrying for a while, Chu Qingyan finally arrived at Rauhezhou with her men. Because their disguises were too realistic, they were not discovered. All the drawings that Kong Feng had drawn were also sent to Chu Qingyan. The more she looked at the poisonous creatures, the more disgusted she felt. The Lulan people were actually raising these strange creatures. It was clear that they were not kind people. She made a prompt decision. Ethereal, Jean Xian, and Su Yi, come with me to explore the Lulan army camp tonight. The few of them exchanged glances. Ethereal took the lead and said, Young Princess Consort, leave the exploration of the camp to us. You can stay with the army and take charge. Chu Qingyan raised her brows at him. Ethereal, I'm a general now, not a little girl. Don't think of me as a fragile person. Moreover, your master has already allowed me to come out without worry. You don't have to worry about me. Just focus on how to deal with the Lulan army. Ethereal rubbed his nose. It was because his master was too worried that he had to remind her not to do dangerous things. However, it seemed that he could not stop the young princess consort. It was better for him to obey the young princess consort's orders. With the mission set, the few of them changed into their night clothes and immediately rushed towards the nearby town of Rauhezhou. Once they reached the town, Jean Xian took out 2 curved hooks from the bag on his shoulder. He handed one to his master. The others also took out their hooks and threw them up to the top of the city gate tower. They pulled them down and stabilized them. Then, they immediately followed the rope up and leaped onto the top of the city gate tower. Then, they quickly leaped down the city gate tower. Because they were too fast and timed, by the time the patrolling soldiers reached the place where they had landed, they had already left. After entering the city, Chu Qingyan gestured for them to split into 2 groups. She and Jean Xian, Ethereal and Su Yi. In order to make the best use of time, the 4 of them used their qinggong to the maximum and leaped onto the roof. Chu Qingyan looked at the buildings that flew past her feet. They were exquisite and luxurious. She could see how prosperous this town used to be. However, after the Lulan army moved in, it had lost its former glory. She didn't know if it was because she knew that there were poisonous creatures here, but she always felt that the moment she entered the city, it was eerie and made her back shiver. She heaved a sigh of relief and began to focus on searching. At this time, Jean Xian suddenly whispered, Master, look over there. Chu Qingyan looked in the direction of the voice and saw 2 rows of soldiers standing guard outside a huge house. She couldn't help but squint her eyes. The security was so tight, could it be that the general of the Lulan army was living inside? Let's go and take a look. Chapter 1431. Chu Qingyan and the man dodged the layers of guards and landed in the big house like butterflies. Let's go to the main hall. Because she was standing on the roof, Chu Qingyan was able to see the brightest spot in the house from above. She pointed to the center and immediately leaped over. When the 2 of them reached the main hall, they squatted down. Jinshin carefully removed the tiles from the ceiling, and the light from the inside immediately shone out. Chu Qingyan adjusted to the light and moved closer, peeking through the palm-sized opening. 3 people sat in the center of the hall. They were all wearing colorful clothes that were decorated with peacock feathers. From Chu Qingyan's point of view, they looked like the clothes of a foreign race. The person in the lead was about 30 or 40 years old. He had a mean face and a mustache, and he looked very shrewd. On his left sat a one-eyed man with a terrifying expression, and on his right sat an old man. It's time to feed the sacred objects again. How many people are there in the city now? The mustache man asked. The one-eyed man replied, including the 150 people we caught yesterday, there are a total of 700 to 800 people. It's enough for several meals. The mustache man nodded with satisfaction. Good, you arrange it. Tomorrow night, we'll bring the sacred objects over. The one-eyed man agreed expressionlessly. The expression on Chu Qingyan's face kept changing. She clenched her hands tightly, afraid that she would not be able to control herself and beat these people up. What they said just now was obviously to feed the captured people of the Sichuan kingdom to the poisonous creatures. They were so blatantly indifferent to the lives of the common people. They were insensitive, cruel, and ruthless. If she did not know that her identity would be exposed and the consequences would be uncontrollable, she would have done it now. Master, please bear with it. Jin Xian was frightened by his master's powerful aura and immediately reminded her in a low voice. Chu Qingyan sighed softly and nodded to him, indicating that she would not act impulsively. At this time, the old man opened his mouth. General Liha, those soldiers sent by the Sichuan have been trapped by our people for many days. When do you plan to close the net? Let's get rid of them together tomorrow, and give the holy creatures more food to eat. The mustached man smiled sinisterly. Yes. Chu Qingyan frowned. She had been wondering why she hadn't seen the troops sent by the Sichuan along the way. Only now did she know that they had been trapped by these people. From the old man's words, she could tell that the soldiers couldn't even protect themselves. It seemed that the situation was worse than she had imagined. After listening for a while longer and finding no other useful information, Chu Qingyan gestured to Jin Xian, and the 2 of them quickly retreated. The 4 of them successfully met outside the city. How is it? Chu Qingyan pulled down her mask and asked Ethereal, who also had a cold expression on her face. Yes, Ethereal replied solemnly. All right, we'll talk about it when we get back. Soon, the group returned to their encampment. Ethereal suppressed her anger along the way, but when they reached her territory, she couldn't hold it in anymore and immediately reported to Chu Qingyan what they had found. Just now, this subordinate and Su-yi headed north and found the place where the people were being held. Many of them were old, young, women, and children. Moreover, they had all been poisoned by poisonous creatures. Many of them have already been poisoned. If we don't save them now, I'm afraid their lives will be in danger. Chu Qingyan's expression was equally ugly. We also found out that the Lulan army plans to feed the poisonous creatures again tomorrow night. From their tone, I'm afraid that after tomorrow night, these people won't be able to survive. Thinking about how the Lulan people called the poisonous creatures holy creatures, she wanted to laugh coldly. There were people who worshipped such disgusting things as holy creatures. They were simply psychopaths. Ethereal's expression changed. Just as she was about to say something, a figure suddenly pounced on her from the side. Jin Xian had just drawn his sword when he saw who it was and looked at his master. Chu Qingyan raised her hand to indicate for Jin Xian to put away his weapon. She calmly looked at Kong Feng, who was kneeling by her feet. What are you doing here? Kong Feng's mind was filled with their conversation just now. He was in a daze and didn't have time to explain that he was here to deliver the painting. He repeatedly kowtowed and begged, esteemed Wang Fei, no matter what, please save the people in the city. They're all innocent. I beg you. He had grown up there since he was a child. The people were simple and honest, so he knew everyone. He couldn't bear to see his family and friends lose their lives like this, especially in such a cruel way. A person with such a talent in painting should have a pride that wouldn't bend easily. However, with the invasion of a strong enemy, the destruction of his family, and the cruel treatment, his pride had been obliterated. What was left was just like the city, struggling at death's door and covered in ruins. Chu Qingyan sighed softly and had someone help him up. Her gaze slowly focused and her expression became serious. "Don't worry, we will save them and return your home." With that, she raised her hand to stop Kong Feng and thanked him profusely. "Since you grew up in Raozhou City, you must be very familiar with the terrain. I need a very detailed topographic map now. I'll leave this task to you." Time was of the essence now and she didn't have much time to waste. Kong Feng returned to his senses and immediately nodded. Without another word, he went to draw. An hour later, a detailed map appeared in Chu Qingyan's hands. Chu Qingyan held a branch and lit up the area under the light of the fire. She said to her confidants around her, "This is the place where the people are imprisoned. Tomorrow night, the Lulan people will bring the poisonous creatures over. It's the perfect time for us to catch them all in one fell swoop. There's no time to lose." "But how are we going to deal with them?" Su Yi raised a question. They didn't have to worry about the Lulan army, but those poisonous creatures couldn't be underestimated. "I've found herbs that can repel these poisonous creatures. When you reach the place, light them up and the poisonous creatures won't come close to you. However, because these herbs are extremely precious, there aren't many of them. Everyone has a small handful, but it can only last for the time it takes to burn a stick of incense." Ethereal continued to answer. He had mentioned this to the young princess Consort before. It was because of these herbs that the young princess dared to suggest tomorrow night's operation. "That's right. So we have to strive to eliminate all these poisonous creatures within the time it takes to burn a stick of incense." Chu Qingyan paused and pointed to a place. "This is an empty space. You will force the poisonous creatures here and then we will use fire to attack." "Then, how do we get in?" Jean Xan asked. They didn't doubt Master's words at all. They also didn't have to worry that there were tens of thousands of soldiers in the city while they only had a few thousand people. The difference in numbers was huge because they still had a team of elite soldiers. Hearing this, Chu Qingyan smiled. Airborne. She had the Eagle King who had thousands of eagle soldiers. How could they not be able to enter this small city? When everyone heard this, they instantly revealed the same smile as the young princess Consort. It seemed that tomorrow night would be very exciting and exciting. Chapter 1432. Although the plan was perfect and highly feasible, it was still a bold plan that would fail on the verge of success and implicate the people in the city. Thus, when Chu Qingyan laid out the plan, she did not let go of any details. Time passed quickly as she was nervous and serious. Soon, night came. Half of the Lai army had already been sent out to do other important things. At this moment, there were only about 1,000 people by her side. But this time, the main force was her adorable beast army and eagle army. General Fang has already left with his men. Jean Xian stood in front of her and reported. Chu Qingyan nodded and said to the others, "Let's set off too." "Yes." Everyone responded and quickly climbed onto the eagle army's back, allowing them to lead them into the city. On the other hand, Bai Yutang and the others led their little brothers and quietly approached the outside of the city. After half an incense's time, the group had already arrived at their ambush position and were only waiting for the right time. At this moment, the people in the city were unaware of the situation outside because everyone's attention was focused on the sacred object feeding that was about to take place. If they paid attention to the surroundings outside the city as usual, they would discover that in the dark night, specks of faint green light lit up in the grass. It was so terrifying. And in the sky, there was a large black mass that looked like dark clouds but didn't. It was gloomy and carried a murderous aura. The one-eyed man that Chu Qingyan saw last night was now standing at the place where the people were being held. In front of him stood a black mass of people. These people were similarly dressed in colorful feathered clothing. Some of them had a giant monster by their side, some had one lying on their shoulder, some had one in their hand and one wrapped around their waist. These were the sacred objects that they were talking about and were not much different from the ones in Kong Feng's painting. The captured people were now being chased to the open space. At this moment, when they saw those terrifying monsters with deformed appearances, they were all trembling in fear and hugged each other, afraid that they would pounce on them in a fit of anger. When the Lulan soldiers saw this scene, they revealed contemptuous and complacent expressions. Meanwhile, the poisonous creatures beside them stared at the people in front of them faintly, as if they knew that these people were their food, and impatiently hissed. The one-eyed man scanned the crowd and said, "Are all the holy artifacts here?" A soldier stood up and said, "Of the 12 battalions, other than the 11th battalion, the rest are all here." "Very well, let's begin," the one-eyed man coldly ordered. When the soldiers who had been pacifying the irritable and impatient holy objects heard this, they were overjoyed. Just as they were about to release the holy objects in their hands, a wolf howl suddenly came from the sky. Everyone was slightly stunned. Then, they heard a series of ear-piercing eagle cries. Everyone looked up. It would have been better if he hadn't seen it. The moment he saw it, he was so scared that his legs almost went soft. The black clouds above their heads suddenly dispersed, and then they got closer and closer. When they got closer, they saw that they were eagles the same size as eagles. What was even more shocking was that there was actually a person sitting on the back of each eagle. These people were holding a bow in their hands, and the sharp tips of the arrows were aimed at them. "Shoot!" A clear and beautiful female voice pierced through the sky. As soon as he finished speaking, the arrows rained down on them, and the soldiers who couldn't dodge in time were all hit. The unforeseen event happened in the blink of an eye. The second wave of arrows was wrapped in kerosene. The bright red flames were like shooting stars in the sky, raining down on them as if they didn't cost money. By the time the one-eyed man reacted, many of his subordinates had already been hit by the arrows. "Shields! Shields! Where are the archers? Go quickly!" The one-eyed man was a little anxious. It was the first time he had been caught off guard. When he came back to his senses, he immediately thought of a countermeasure. However, no matter how fast he reacted, he couldn't keep up with the unforeseen event. "Not good, sir. There's, the soldier didn't come out for a long time." The one-eyed man kicked him down and said fiercely, "What do you want to say?" There's a wild beast attacking the city outside." The soldier recalled the ferocious wolves, tigers, and leopards he saw on the city tower and was still in shock. "What?" The one-eyed man didn't understand what was going on. What happened next cleared his confusion. Just as the Lulan army was about to attack the commoners, Chu Qingyan gave the order to attack. Bai Yutang and the other two brought their little brothers and surrounded the 4 city gates. Using the giraffe's height, they stepped on the giraffe's body one by one and jumped onto its head. They leaped onto the city gate tower, and the soldiers who tried to resist were all slapped to death by their claws. "It's a tiger. Bear. Ah, don't bite me, don't bite me." Soon, Bai Yutang and the rest took over the entire city tower and quickly ran into the city. They went to support their master. The fastest city in history was breached in the blink of an eye. When the one-eyed man heard that the city had been breached, he was completely stunned. The wild beasts rushing over from afar confirmed this fact once again. But so what if the city was breached? He still had the holy artifact army. Let the holy artifacts attack them. Don't. As soon as he finished speaking, he was choked by the scene in front of him. He couldn't say another word. The poisonous beasts raised by the Lulan people were indeed ferocious and poisonous. Although they were useful against normal people, they were nothing in front of this huge army of beasts. This was because they all had a weakness, which was that they moved very slowly. They were not as agile as the army of beasts. When the poisonous beasts were about to bite Bai Yutang and the rest, they all retreated far away. When the poisonous beasts weren't paying attention, they would go up and slap them with their claws without mercy. After a few rounds of fighting, the poisonous beasts were enraged by Bai Yutang and the rest. However, Bai Yutang and the rest were even more excited. They liked it when they were angry but couldn't bite them. Jean Xian and the rest had already ignited the medicinal herbs that Ethereal had given them. When the smell came out, the poisonous beasts that were about to attack them all avoided them. This way, they fell right into the trap that Chu Qingyan had drawn for them. So this was the scene that the one-eyed man saw. Chu Qingyan's people didn't make a move. They just held a bunch of ignited herbs and drove their holy artifacts away. Meanwhile, the wild beasts were killing the holy artifacts in the circle. The one-eyed man's eyes widened. He never thought that their invincible holy artifacts would encounter such a situation. Are you all dead? Hurry up and save the holy artifacts. Although he didn't know why these people had gathered the holy artifacts together, his instincts told him that it wasn't something good. The one-eyed man didn't care about his status as he roared the order. Chu Qingyan snorted softly, then made a gesture. Ethereal and the rest helped the commoners onto the back of the eagle. Xiaohai chirped, and its little brothers carried the commoners away. By the time the one-eyed man realized it, it was too late. He couldn't even protect himself. Chapter 1433. Once the citizens were sent away, Chu Qingyan would be able to deal with them in peace. At this moment, the mustached man and the old man heard the commotion and rushed over. Unfortunately, they were too late. The citizens had been moved away and their men were trapped. Moreover, the situation was one-sided. They couldn't understand how they ended up in such a situation in such a short period of time. The poisonous creatures were all gathered together. Without the protection talisman, the Lulan soldiers were like cabbages and radishes, waiting to be harvested by Jean Xian and the rest. The Howling Cavalry were all experts and were not to be trifled with. Although the mustached man and his men outnumbered them, they couldn't hold up against 10 people. Moreover, they didn't have the holy relic with them, so they were even more flustered. The old man shouted, "Capture the leader first." Chu Qingyan looked at the old man who was pointing at her and realized that he was the leader. At this moment, he knew that he couldn't stabilize the morale of the soldiers and decided to target her. As long as she was captured, her people wouldn't be a problem in their eyes. It seemed that this old man was quite smart. Unfortunately, they underestimated her. The moment the old man finished speaking, the mustached man and his men rushed towards her. Chu Qingyan, on the other hand, slowly drew out the long sword at her waist. The silver sword was bright and clear, tainted with the moonlight, making her look even more holy and pure. Even though she was wearing a dazzling red battle robe, it could not hide the coldness she exuded. Last time when she was fighting with Wu Lin, in order not to hurt anyone, she had held back most of her strength. Now, she could let go and practice. She wanted to see what kind of effect it would have when her skills were combined with the inner force that Dong Ting had passed on to her. She was looking forward to it. The moment someone got close to her, he was killed by her long sword. Chu Qingyan smirked. She flipped her sword and flew towards the mustached man. To capture the leader, capture the leader. She understood this principle. She injected her inner energy into the sword and a sharp sword aura spread out. Those who got close to her were all injured by her sword aura and fell to the ground, vomiting blood. Originally, there were 2 barriers in front of the mustached man, but they were broken by this unknown girl. He was stunned for a moment and quickly blocked the sharp sword with his saber. He was the most famous swordsman in Lulan, but he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to subdue this little girl. In a fight between experts, one would know whether or not they had the skill the moment they made their move. The moment the swords clashed, Chu Qingyan knew that this person was not easy to deal with, but this was exactly what she wanted. She used 60% of her inner force, and her movements became even faster. To an outsider, her sword techniques were dazzling. After 3 or 4 moves, the mustached man was first shocked by her rich inner strength at such a young age, but then he quickly adjusted his state of mind and devoted himself to the fight between the two. He could not be defeated by this junior, not to mention this was a girl. Su-yi and the others appeared on the left and right of their mistress. They fought the enemy together with her and helped her get rid of the little Luo who had surrounded her. Jin Xian directly faced the one-eyed man. Just now, he had seen him attack, and every move he made was fatal. Many of them were injured. Jin Xian directly took on the task of dealing with him. For a moment, the city was in chaos. No one could tell whether they were allies or enemies. After exchanging no less than 50 moves with the mustached man, Chu Qingyan began to exert her strength. After the mustached man blocked her sword, she used her other palm to attack him. The mustached man couldn't take it. He spat out a mouthful of blood and was sent flying. The moment the mustached man fell to the ground, someone went forward to catch him. Chu Qingyan withdrew her sword and coldly looked at the astonished mustached man. The mustached man couldn't believe that he had actually lost to this little girl. However, if the mustached man knew that Chu Qingyan hadn't used 70% of her inner strength to deal with him, he would probably die of shame. Chu Qingyan didn't have much to say to this kind of person who disregarded human life. She turned around and looked at the battlefield. Seeing that the mustached man was subdued, the morale of the Lu Lan army dissipated. Not long after, they all laid down their weapons and surrendered. As for the one-eyed man, he was directly dealt with by Jin Xian. Chu Qingyan nodded inwardly. The one-eyed man's martial arts weren't weak. It seemed that Jin Xian's skills had improved quite a bit. Because she didn't bring many people with her, the task of guarding the place was left to Xiao Hai and the rest. The surrendered Lu Lan soldiers were surrounded by Xiuhua Cake and her little brothers. She walked around and roared from time to time, scaring the Lu Lan soldiers even more. The poisonous creatures were forced into a corner. They bared their fangs and brandished their claws, but they were afraid of the medicinal herbs in everyone's hands and didn't dare to move forward. Bai Yutong and the rest were eyeing them covetously, occasionally swatting them with their claws. The poisonous creatures didn't dare to act rashly. Shiwu walked over and reported, "Master, the people have been sent to a safe place." Chu Qingyan nodded. Everything was going smoothly. At this time, seeing that his people were captured and the sacred objects were also threatened, the mustached man became anxious. "Who are you people? We have no enmity with you. Why are you targeting us?" When he heard this, he knew that the other party didn't recognize them. The mustached man and the others couldn't be blamed for not recognizing them. Even if the Sichuan emperor and the others were here, they wouldn't be able to imagine that these green-faced people were their own people. Moreover, it was obvious that the other party couldn't take it anymore and wanted to negotiate with her. However, after seeing how they treated the people in such a cruel way, how could Chu Qingyan give them the chance? Chu Qingyan ignored him and said to Ethereal, who had returned to her side, "How is it? Are the poisonous creatures all here? Not a single one is missing. They've all been forced into a corner." Ethereal didn't dare to delay and immediately replied. Chu Qingyan was very satisfied. "Good, do as we planned." Ethereal also revealed a treacherous smile. "Yes." With that, Ethereal called for Su-yi and the others to help. The mustached man had a high position in the military and had always been flattered. Now that he saw this person ignoring him, he was filled with anger. Just as he was about to reprimand Chu Qingyan, he realized that the person who had been talking to her just now suddenly took a few bottles and distributed them to the people around him. Those people didn't stop walking toward the sacred objects. He widened his eyes and anxiously questioned Chu Qingyan, "What are you doing to the sacred objects?" When she heard them mention the sacred objects, Chu Qingyan was already filled with disgust. Now that she heard the mustached man mention it again, she snorted coldly. Sacred objects? How can such dirty and ugly things be called sacred objects? Ha! Today, I'm going to make them disappear from this world and prevent them from being used by people with bad intentions. I'm going to make sure they can't harm innocent people anymore. You, the mustached man was stunned by her words and was shocked by the cold aura she was exuding. Not far away, Ethereal and the others held the white bottles in their hands and poured a drop onto each of the curled-up poisonous creatures. At first, there was no reaction. Then, the poisonous creatures began to struggle and shriek miserably. However, they were quickly corroded by the drop of medicine and slowly melted into a pool of water. This scene made Shao-Chi, who was used to seeing all kinds of scenes, dumbfounded. It was simply too magical. It was really as Master said, to make them disappear without leaving anything behind. Chapter 1434. Ethereal's hand that was holding the bottle trembled. Actually, he hadn't thought that the medicine he made would have such an effect. He was both surprised and delighted. At this moment, he couldn't help but look at his little princess consort. The little princess consort had told him to make this medicine. She said that its original name was sulfuric acid. Yesterday, he had listened to her and thought about it for an entire night. Then, he had used the herbs he brought to make it. In order to deal with the Lulan kingdom, his master had asked him to bring all the herbs he had. Also, considering that these poisonous creatures weren't ordinary animals, he had asked his sect to send over some rare herbs. He hadn't thought that it would really come in handy. And the new product that he had developed had such a novel effect. This made a medical fanatic so excited that he couldn't control himself. Chu Qingyan naturally saw the effect. She was also very surprised. According to modern sulfuric acid, it wouldn't be so corrosive. She couldn't help but think of the dissolving water that was described in the book. Perhaps the herbs Ethereal had brought were too strong. Also, the modern prescription was different from the one he had figured out. It was normal for there to be a difference. Moreover, the effect was surprisingly good. She was very satisfied. She had achieved her goal. Ethereal's medicine didn't have a lot of dosage, but there were at least tens of thousands of poisonous creatures on the field. However, Chu Qingyan and he weren't worried about the dosage. This was because the water these poisonous creatures had turned into was corrosive. When they struggled and ran around in pain, the water splashed onto the poisonous creatures next to them. 1 by 1, 10 by 10, and 100 by 100, the poisonous creatures collapsed one by one and turned into water. The mustached man watched helplessly as the holy objects disappeared before his eyes one after another in such a terrifying manner, which made his hair stand on end. At this moment, Chu Qingyan had the leisure to deal with this person. She looked at him with a smile. Do you know about the cycle of karma in Buddhism? Good will be rewarded with good, and evil will be punished with evil. It's not that there won't be any karma, it's just that the time hasn't come yet. Someone will come to deal with the sins you've committed. The heavens will reincarnate. If you don't believe it, look up and see who will be spared by the heavens. She said this with a smile, but to the mustached man's ears, it was like a death sentence. He couldn't help but look at her warily. Who exactly are you? Who sent you here? Chu Qingyan chuckled. Death is at hand, so there's no harm in telling you. Otherwise, you won't know who you've lost to even after you've gone to the 18th level of hell. She paused and looked into the eyes of the man with the handlebar mustache. The corners of her lips curled up slightly. We are under the banner of the King of England and Shaosu. The King of England? Once this name came out, there was no need to explain anything. The man with the handlebar mustache was stiffly lifted up. Before he was taken away, he looked at her blankly and muttered, "No wonder, no wonder. Only such a person would be able to raise such an army." Seeing this, Chu Qingyan felt a little proud. Big Ice Cube's name was really famous. As long as his name was mentioned, everyone would know him. As one of his people, she really felt honored to be with him. Seeing that the man with the handlebar mustache was deeply affected, Chu Qingyan didn't say anything more. She just waved her hand and had him taken away. She knew that these poisonous creatures were called sacred by the people of Lulan because they worshipped them blindly. Thus, she wanted them to watch them die in front of their eyes and personally destroy their beliefs. This way, it would be easier to destroy their beliefs than holding them captive. This way, they wouldn't dare to do anything, and it would be easier to subdue her. The man with the handlebar mustache who was taken away woke up with a start. He struggled to turn around and question Chu Qingyan, but the person holding him down didn't give him a chance. With an elbow, he almost cried out in pain. "Let go of me, let go of me. She hasn't told me who she is." He suddenly remembered that when he agreed to cooperate with Nansang, he didn't hear that Xiao Su had such an army by his side. The group of beasts she led was so valiant, so why weren't there any rumors about her in the various countries? In contrast to the man with the handlebar mustache's agitation, one of the people holding him down calmly glanced at him. "That person is our master and also His Royal Highness Princess Consort. However, you don't have the right to know her name." Xiao Su's princess consort. The man with the handlebar mustache was completely stunned. So it was one of that person's people. Xiao Su was already a terrifying existence, but his wife was the same. It seemed that their defeat this time wasn't unjust. The man with the handlebar mustache stopped struggling. It was obvious that he had accepted his fate. Even if he didn't accept his fate, there was nothing he could do. Because on his left and right, there were two leopards eyeing him covetously. Their faint eyes seemed to be telling him that if he dared to move again, they would bite off his neck. "Young Princess Consort, the poisonous creatures have all been cleaned up." Ethereal cupped his hands and bowed respectfully to the tall and slender person. Today, they once again witnessed the young Princess Consort's power. At the same time, they were proud of their master who was far away on the horizon. Their master and the young Princess Consort were a match made in heaven. She was the only one qualified to be their matriarch. Chu Qingyan watched as they sprinkled sand on the corrosive water. The corners of her mouth lifted slightly. "You all did very well. Thank you for your hard work." The Battle of Raohezhou was won. When Chu Qingyan defeated the Lulan army stationed at Raohezhou, a letter appeared in Xiao Su's hand. His dark eyes didn't reveal any emotions. After he finished reading the letter, he casually put it aside and said indifferently, "This Prince of Nansang is indeed smart." "Master, what did the other party say in the letter?" Turan asked in confusion. Someone had used an arrow to shoot this letter in the dark of the night. When he saw his master's name written on the letter, he had immediately sent it over. Xiao Su's voice was indifferent and monotonous. "Pang Huang wants to cooperate with this prince and asked to meet this prince tomorrow night." Hearing this, Turan couldn't help but frown. "This prince of Nansang is too daring. He dares to ask you to meet at this time and want you to cooperate with him. That's too whimsical." Xiao Su shook his head. "This person is good at reading people's minds. He dared to send this letter after careful consideration. He knows what happened between Ben Wang and the imperial family. He knows that Ben Wang is dissatisfied with the imperial family, so he proposed this." After his master said this, Turan felt that it was very reasonable. Last month, they were still fighting to the death with the Sichuan army. Now, it was only because of the common people that their master was willing to cooperate. They didn't have any feelings left with the imperial family. If this Pang Huang's proposal was put to someone else, they might have agreed. The Earth Spirit thought for a while and asked, "Then will Master agree?" Ben Wang is still clear about family affairs and state affairs. I never mix them up. But this appointment, Xiao Su hooked his lips coldly, Ben Wang still has to go. How can one catch a tiger cub without entering the tiger's den? Turan smiled when he heard this. This was their master. He could keep his heart at any time. In another place, Xiao Ran received the news and immediately stood up from his chair. "You said that Pang Huang sent someone to send a letter to eldest brother?" "This little one saw it with my own eyes." "It's absolutely true." The Imperial Guard immediately said. Xiao Ran's body swayed and fell back into the chair. He muttered, "Imperial brother, are you really going to betray the country for glory?" Chapter 1435. Pang Huang touched the corner of his clothes and asked coldly, "Has the news been spread out?" Torai, who was standing below, had just waved away the soldier who was reporting to him. When he heard the question, he immediately stepped forward and said, "The letter has been sent to Xiao Su, and the news has also been secretly leaked to Xiao Ran." Pang Huang nodded, the coldness on his face dissipated a lot, and his eyes were filled with a smile. "Well done." Torai was a little happy to be praised by the crown prince, but he also had some doubts in his heart. Seeing that the crown prince was in a good mood, he boldly asked, "Your Highness, since you are ready to cooperate with Xiao Su, why did you leak the news to Xiao Ran? Aren't you worried that Xiao Ran will trip you up?" Pang Huang felt that his subordinate had a good brain when he was fighting, but usually, he was just like a brainless person. Although he disliked him, he still had some patience at this moment, so he explained it to him as if he was bored. "Whether Xiao Su will cooperate with us is uncertain, but if Xiao Ran knows about it, it will be different. If Xiao Su doesn't cooperate with us, the seed of doubt will be planted in Xiao Ran's heart. When the time comes, the two of them won't be on the same side, and they won't be able to work together. This will be beneficial to us. When the time comes, when they fight, won't we just sit back and reap the benefits? If Xiao Su cooperates with us, it will be best. Then, Xishuan will have nothing to fear. No matter what the situation is, it will only be beneficial to us." After hearing what his crown prince said, Tori seemed to have regained his senses. He said excitedly, "Xiao Su's men and Xiao Ran's men added up to about the same number of troops as us. If Xiao Su doesn't agree to cooperate, we can also drive a wedge between them. At that time, we can defeat them one by one. So, Your Highness, this is a good plan to kill two birds with one stone. We can both attack and defend." His crown prince always likes to leave a backup plan. Every time he can catch the other side off guard, it is really admirable. Pang Huang didn't comment. He touched his chin and waited for Xiao Su's reply. "Xiao Su, what are you thinking in your heart? If you want revenge, I will give you a chance. Do you want it? Or do you want to cling to your original blind loyalty and take everything on yourself? No matter which choice I make, I will continue to devour Shi Xian into my stomach, and I will not spit out a single bit." An hour later, Pang Huang received a reply as he wished. Although it was only a simple, "good" written on it. Seeing Tori stretching his neck trying to read the letter, Pang Huang, he directly threw the letter. Tori read the letter in one glance and couldn't help but feel annoyed. This Xiao Su was too arrogant. Their crown prince wrote such a long letter and he dismissed it with a single word. It was really infuriating. Only the crown prince, who had such a good temperament, would not care about it. However, Tori quickly restrained his emotions and raised a question. "Your Highness, could this be a trap? There's no way Xiao Su wouldn't have thought of that. But no matter what kind of mentality he has when he accepts the invitation, we still have to be prepared." Tori was stunned. "Your Highness means? If he can agree, that is the best. But if he comes prepared, then we can't let him slaughter us, right? Since he came to our territory, whether he can leave or not, isn't it up to us?" Pang Huang slightly curved his lips, revealing a cold smile. Torai quickly understood the meaning of his words. He knew that the crown prince would not fight an unprepared battle, so he immediately complimented, "Your Highness is very considerate." Pang Huang smiled and said ambiguously, "Go and prepare." Tomorrow was the day of the meeting. Time was tight, so Tori didn't dare to delay and immediately went to work. Holding his chin with his fingers, Pang Huang looked very interested. He was really looking forward to tomorrow's meeting. After Xiao Su sent the letter, he no longer paid attention to Pang Huang. Instead, he thought of another thing. "How's the thing I asked you to do in private?" When Turin heard his master's question, although he didn't specify what it was, the master and servant had a tacit understanding, so he instantly remembered. "Master, you asked at the right time. Water Spirit sent a letter this morning, saying that with your Highness's order, the commoners have enlisted. Now, we have 80,000 people, and the number is still increasing. It is very likely that it will break through 100,000. Flowing Light, Sweet Potato, and Brawny Man have already started training these new recruits. They should be able to enter the battlefield in 2 days. Then, our men won't be stretched too thin. These words eased Xiao Su's tense mood by quite a bit. Very good. Although we currently hold the advantage, compared to the Southern Blue Empire and the Junlan Empire, our manpower is slightly inferior. If the troops we recruited can be put to good use, then this battle won't be so difficult for us. Even the cleverest housewife can't cook without rice. No matter how strong his ability to lead troops was, he couldn't do without people under him. In the battle with Xiao Ran, he lost nearly 10,000 of his 100,000 men. Including the ones he sent to other places, he only had 60 to 70,000 men to fight against Nan Sung. If he hadn't caught Nan Sung off guard, he wouldn't have been able to gain the upper hand so easily last time. However, the two armies had already fought, and each side's strength was clear as day. Therefore, he couldn't be half a step behind in every step. Therefore, in the face of a great enemy, he used his own name to issue a recruitment notice. He didn't expect to receive such shocking news in just a few days. It seemed that he had underestimated the patriotism of the commoners. In fact, it wasn't that he underestimated the commoners, but that he underestimated his own appeal. If the imperial court had issued a notice, there wouldn't have been so many people signing up. They had only joined the army because of Xiao Su. The god of war, king of England, an undefeated legend. Only by following him would they have a guarantee. Moreover, he had been protecting the Sichuan for so many years. Compared to the imperial court, they believed that he could lead them to chase away the bandits who had destroyed their homeland. This was their trust in Xiao Su. If one thought about it on a deeper level, it would be the will of the people. Xiao Su didn't think too much about it. He only wanted to get rid of the three countries. However, just because he didn't think of it didn't mean that others didn't think of it. The imperial study was a mess. The Sichuan emperor gasped for breath. The table in front of him had already been overturned, and there was no place for him to strike. The palace servants were all hiding far away, not daring to move forward. They were afraid of angering the emperor, and then they would die without a burial place. Eunuch Chao stood to the side, not daring to move forward. Now that the emperor was no longer angry, he finally dared to move forward. He carefully comforted, "Your Majesty, don't be angry and harm your body. That unfilial son has already openly recruited soldiers. How can I swallow this anger?" The Sichuan emperor brushed away Eunuch Chao's hand. He was choking on his anger. Chapter 1436. Perhaps His Royal Highness had no choice but to do so. There were too many of them. Eunuch Chao looked at the furious His Majesty and defended Xiao Su in a low voice. It was not a wise move to make a fuss about this at this time. However, it was clear that His Majesty had lost his sense of priorities. As the oldest servant by His Majesty's side, he could only give a few words of advice for the sake of His Majesty. He knew that it was impossible to do it, but he still did it. "Chao Ji, why are you also on that unfilial son's side?" Sichuan Emperor aimed the cannon at him and narrowed his eyes. "Could it be that you have been bribed by him?" Eunuch Chao felt a chill in his heart and immediately knelt down. "Your Majesty, I am absolutely loyal to you. I can swear that heaven and earth can be my witness." Having lived together for decades, he naturally knew Chao Ji's temperament. Sichuan Emperor's expression was still ugly. He waved his hand and motioned for him to stand up. "That's good." Eunuch Chao slowly stood up, trembling. He could not help but sigh softly in his heart. Ever since His Majesty fell ill, his temper had become more and more irritable. It was as if there was always a nameless fire in his heart that he had nowhere to vent. Sichuan Emperor sat down angrily. His gaze once again fell on the news sent by the spy. It said that Xiao Su had privately recruited people into the camp. At this critical moment, he could understand Xiao Su's actions. However, he did not expect that his son would have such a strong influence. This was the real reason for his anger. When the dust settled on the encirclement of the three countries, Xiao Su's power would definitely not be underestimated. No, he had to think of a backup plan. Sichuan Emperor soon fell into deep thought. Eunuch Chow, who was beside him, saw that he had quieted down and was relieved. He immediately ordered people to come in and clean up. However, when he turned around and saw the sinister look on Sichuan Emperor's face, he could not help but feel cold all over. What was His Majesty thinking about? At the same time, Xiao Ho heard about the changes in the palace. At this moment, he was using his fingers to play with the exquisite lock. The bright color on the lock had already become somewhat dark. It could be seen that its owner often stroked it. Imperial father is really a contradictory person. On one hand, he wants imperial brother to help protect the country, but on the other hand, he is wary and jealous of him. This prince feels tired for him. Her faint smile was filled with disdain for her father. Without magnanimity, it would be very difficult to sit firmly on the throne. The emperor was in the highest position in the imperial court. He gave orders and selected capable people, which was equivalent to living behind the scenes. The officials who worked for him were the ones who faced the people directly. Of course, the people preferred the ministers who had rendered meritorious service over the emperor. Of course, they were more in awe of the emperor than the officials. He thought that his imperial father was already used to this pattern, but he didn't expect. Thinking of this, he stopped laughing because he thought of his grandfather's family. Didn't they also get pulled down by the emperor because of their high achievements? The heart of a monarch is hard to fathom. Lord, why bother with this kind of person? It's not worth it. Lin Jiangdong stood in front of him. When he mentioned the Sichuan emperor, he also had a look of disdain. This kind of person didn't deserve to be the ruler of a country. Teacher is right. Xiao Ho nodded. How is the palace? Lin Jiangdong knew what he was asking about. His eyebrows raised slightly, revealing a smile of schadenfreude. I heard that recently, the emperor in the palace was afraid that His Majesty would suddenly die. The war situation is so chaotic that he would lose the fat meat that was about to be in his hands, so he reduced the dosage of the medicine and kept delaying it. But because of this, His Majesty's temper has become more and more irritable. He often gets angry at the civil and military officials, causing the officials to not dare to say anything. In the long run, imperial father will quickly lose the trust of the officials. When the country is in danger, he didn't take on the responsibility, but blindly blamed the officials. I really don't know where his scheming went all these years. But this is also good. 1,000 li dike can be destroyed by an ant's nest. When that happens, there won't be so many people on his side. He only had himself to blame for all this. He couldn't blame anyone else. Xiao Ho faintly curved his lips, then remembered something and asked, You found them? Lin Jiangdong immediately nodded. He was just about to report this to Lord. They entered the residence 2 hours ago, but, before imperial brother went to the battlefield, he wrote a letter to ask him to help take care of his mother-in-law and father-in-law. Xiao Ho didn't even think about it and agreed. Counting the days, the carriage should have arrived. However, when he saw Lin Jiangdong's hesitant look, he instantly had a bad premonition. This was the first time imperial brother had so earnestly asked him for help. It would be best if nothing went wrong. Teacher, if you have something to say, just say it. There's no need to hesitate. Lin Jiangdong couldn't hide it and said directly, Madam Chu has already arrived, but old Master Chu ran away halfway. We haven't found any trace of him yet. At first, Xiao Su wanted to send the 2 back to Liancheng. However, after sending the 2 out, he felt that Liancheng wasn't safe there. He changed his mind at the last minute and sent a letter to Xiao Ho, asking him to help take care of them. However, not long after the letter was sent, old Master Chu disappeared. Xiao Ho couldn't help but twitch his mouth. He had long heard that old Master Chu's mind was like a child's. He didn't expect that he would do something like this at this time. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. However, if he didn't find him quickly, he was afraid that imperial brother and his little princess consort would be worried at the front lines. He couldn't sit by and do nothing. Even if they didn't go missing because they were transferred to his hands, he still had to make sure that the couple didn't have any worries. Teacher, send a spy to find old Master Chu's whereabouts. Don't let anything happen to him. Lin Jiangdong was very surprised to see that his own lord had actually used a spy. That was a force that couldn't be used as a last resort. It wasn't inferior to the dark feather under the King of England's water spirit. However, he quickly restrained his surprised expression and nodded. This subordinate understands. Lord was loving the house and its crow. After Lin Jiangdong picked out a few more important matters to report, Xiao Ho let him go and do his work. The room regained its silence. Xiao Ho stood up, the exquisite lock in his hand making a crisp sound with his movements. Every time little rascal came to find him, he could hear this sound from afar. Unfortunately, the bell was still ringing, but the person was already gone. Now, he could only rely on this sound and imagine that she was still by his side. Sometimes, when you lose something, you will understand how precious it is compared to when you have it. He placed his hand on his chest. The wound from that day had basically healed, but the wound in his heart would never heal. He unconsciously touched the exquisite lock. Because he had always held it in his hand, it was stained with his body temperature. It was warm and he couldn't help but think of the scene when he fell off the cliff. This vine, 2 people can't survive, but 1 person can. She looked at him gently. Little rascal, how could you understand? You are the vine that keeps me alive. Without you, how could I live alone? He slowly tightened his grip, wrapping the chain in his palm, just like that day when he held her hand. Walk slowly. Remember to wait for me. Wait for me to finish my revenge. Chapter 1437. Is there any news from the old man? After Mu Ling finished fiddling with the tools in his hands, he saw Turan coming out of his master's tent. He couldn't help but pull him over and ask with concern. Turan's expression changed slightly when he heard this. He pursed his lips and said, "There's still no news from Water Spirit." Among them, due to Father Chu's fondness for toys, Mu Ling had been with Father Chu the longest. Although Father Chu always asked him to make some toys, Mu Ling really liked this innocent old man. When he found out that he had disappeared, he was extremely worried. Now that he heard that there was no news, he couldn't help but sigh. I wonder where the old man is now. Did anyone bully him? Is he well fed and warm? Turan patted him on the shoulder when he heard this, as if comforting him or himself. The old man is so smart. He won't let himself be wronged. Besides, isn't no news good news? Now that the war was in chaos, they were most worried that the old man would be captured by the enemy. If they didn't hear any news, it meant that the old man was at least safe for now. Mu Ling nodded. That's the only thing we can think of. Turan's eyes habitually scanned the surroundings. A familiar figure entered his field of vision. He couldn't help but stop. He seemed to have seen this figure somewhere before. Mu Ling saw him standing there in a daze and couldn't help but nudge him. What's wrong with you? You don't look so good. Turan withdrew his gaze and pinched between his eyebrows. Maybe it's because I haven't had much rest recently. It's nothing serious. Mu Ling knew that once he got into work, he couldn't care about anything else. He couldn't help but say a few words. You have to take care of your body. Master won't like you working so hard. Turan nodded and patted him on the shoulder again. I know what I'm doing. Don't you want to show the new weapon to Master? Go quickly. Seeing that he agreed, Turan didn't nag anymore. He nodded at him and walked towards the central tent. At this time, Turan turned his gaze back to the place where he was just now, but there was no one there. He could not help but frown. Could it be that he had not rested well recently and was hallucinating? Thinking of this, Turan decided to go and inform his master about the task assigned to him. After that, he went back to sleep. Tonight, he had to follow his master to meet Pang Huang. He couldn't afford to make any mistakes here. After Turan left, 2 or 3 people walked back to where he had been. Brother Chu, are you sure you dropped it here? The young man looked around as if he was looking for something. The man called Brother Chu stomped his feet and said anxiously, It must be. This is where I took it out just now. Hurry up and find it. Otherwise, I won't sing for you anymore. The young man immediately covered his ears. He did not want to listen to Big Brother Chu's singing. The lyrics were interesting, but when he sang, it was not the same. Other people needed money to sing, but Big Brother Chu's singing was life-threatening. However, he still obediently helped to search until he found something with a rope hanging from a crack in a stone. Brother Chu, is this it? Big Brother Chu immediately jumped over, snatched the thing, and protected it in his arms. It was made of agate and then strung together into a string of candied haws. It looked very realistic and could be mistaken for the real thing. He only heard him threaten, "I finally found the candied haws that blockhead made for me. Candied haws, don't run around in the future. Otherwise, if I can't find you, I don't want you anymore." The young man felt strange when he heard Big Brother Chu mention names like Upside-Down Scallion, Blockhead, and White Impermanence. However, seeing him like this, he could not get anything out of him. He simply stopped asking and pushed him back to the tent. "We have a task tonight. We have to go back quickly. Otherwise, if they don't see us, they will blame us." I know. Little Ear, you are so annoying." Little Ear staggered. What kind of name was this? It had been nearly a month since he had separated from his parents. He did not know if they had arrived safely. Chu Qingyan stood in the prefectural magistrate's study. Her eyes were filled with faint longing. These 2 days, she had been reorganizing Rao Hezhou and purging the remnants of Lolan's army. She was as busy as a spinning top. Now that she had time to take a breather, she began to miss her parents who were thousands of miles away, as well as the big ice cube that she was worried about. Because the flames of war were burning everywhere, it was not as convenient to send messages to each other as before. As a result, their communication with each other was lagging behind. At this moment, Ethereal and Jean Xian walked in. Chu Qingyan heard the footsteps and turned around. Seeing the two of them relaxed, the corners of her mouth could not help but curl up slightly. "How did it go?" Ethereal stood up and reported, "This subordinate has ordered people to disinfect the whole city. The poisoned people have been gathered together. This subordinate has checked their injuries and treated them. Now, there are no major problems. The doctors in the city who were not injured have taken over this subordinate's work and are in charge of taking care of them. This has freed up a lot of manpower for us. As for the people who were not poisoned, they have been washed with mugwort so they will not be infected." Because the young princess was worried that even if the poisonous creatures died, the poison left behind would still be infectious. So, she told him to eliminate the source of the problem. He did not think of this at first, but after the young princess reminded him, he broke out in a cold sweat. Fortunately, the young princess thought of this. If there was an epidemic similar to the plague, then the consequences of the people in the city would be unimaginable. Chu Qingyan nodded with satisfaction and turned her eyes to Jean Xian. Jean Xian intuitively stepped forward and reported, "Master's guess is right. The people sent by the imperial court were trapped in the mountains in front of us by the Lulan army. Last night, Su'er led people to rescue them. Now, they have been placed in the center of the city. There are a total of 30,000 people, and the commander is Yunfeng, 30,000? Chu Qingyan was taken aback. She remembered that in the information given to her by the big ice cube, the imperial court sent nearly 100,000 people. How come in the blink of an eye, only 1/3 of them were left? Seeing the shock on his master's face, Jean Xian was also very surprised when he received the news. But after knowing the reason, he was not surprised. They all suffered from the poisonous creatures of Lulan Kingdom. Coupled with the fact that they were not familiar with the terrain, many of them were poisoned. That's why there are only so many of them left. Chu Qingyan thought of those poisonous creatures and couldn't help but twitch the corner of her mouth. They were indeed not easy to deal with. "Good, bring Yunfeng to see me. She can't delay any longer." This time, she only destroyed half of the Lulan army's strength. She must act quickly and finish them off before the other side receives the news. Only in this way can she rush over to support the big ice cube. Although Chu Qingyan thought so in her heart, in the eyes of others, it was not the same. Being able to destroy half of the country's army in a single confrontation was already shocking and incomparably heaven-defying. Only people like Chu Qingyan didn't take it seriously. She didn't know what kind of sensation it would cause when the news spread out. Chapter 1438. Yun Feng was a young man in his early 30s. When he came in, although the wounds on his body had been treated, he seemed to be seriously injured. He walked in with a limp. When he saw Chu Qingyan, he was stunned for a moment before he immediately knelt down and saluted. This general pays his respects to General Chu. Chu Qingyan had heard her subordinates describe Yun Feng before. He was upright and plain-spoken, and his commanding ability was not bad. He treated his soldiers like brothers. Seeing him today, although he was severely injured, he was still full of energy and had an outstanding temperament. Chu Qingyan's first impression of him was not bad. She raised her hand and saluted. General Yun is too polite. You are still injured, so there is no need for such formalities. Jin Xan, give General Yun a seat. Hearing Chu Qingyan's words, the anxiety in Yun Feng's heart subsided a little. The person who brought him here introduced the person in front of him as the fiancée of His Royal Highness. She was also the one who led the troops to destroy the city and destroy the Lulan army. He couldn't help but think of the rumors from a while ago. His Royal Highness betrayed the imperial family in a fit of anger for a woman, causing a huge uproar. Now that he looked at it, the rumors were not credible. At least, the young girl in front of him was full of vigor. She was a woman who was not inferior to a man. Yun Feng's foot was still hurting, but he didn't decline and sat down on the wooden chair. Thank you for saving us, General Chu. Otherwise, this general and my subordinates would have become food for the poisonous creatures. When he returned to the city, he heard his subordinates report that when Chu Qingyan saved them, the Lulan army was planning to feed everyone to the poisonous creatures. He couldn't help but think of those ugly and terrifying monsters. His heart trembled. Other than respect for Chu Qingyan, he was also grateful. Chu Qingyan looked at Yun Feng's respectful appearance and nodded in satisfaction. This person was not pedantic and did not look down on her because she was a woman. He also understood the situation. Although they were the Sichuan army, in front of her, they were still living under someone else's roof. Furthermore, they owed her a favor and did not put on airs. This person was quite sensible. General Yun, there is no need to be so polite. His Highness told me to protect the people and the country. I am just fulfilling the mission His Highness gave me. She said this on purpose to establish a good image for Big Ice Cube. She remembered how the Sichuan Emperor had people smear Big Ice Cube's reputation after he left the capital. Yun Feng was shocked and his eyes slightly hot. Although His Royal Highness had fallen out with the entire court, he still had the people in his heart. And how could such a selfless person be as treacherous, disloyal and unfilial as the rumors? He sorted out his emotions and said even more respectfully, May I ask why General Chu has summoned this general? Chu Qingyan looked at him and saw that the time was right. She stood up straight and walked to the Sichuan map hanging on the wall and pointed at their current location. Rao Hezhou has been recovered by us, but Chenzhou and Guanfuzhou are still in the hands of the Lulan people. The two cities that Chu Qingyan pointed at were the cities that were taken by the Lulan army because they did not protect them well. Yun Feng's cheeks were slightly hot and he looked ashamed. It is shameful to say that we have more people than them, but still, the past is the past. General Yun, you don't have to blame yourself. The most important thing now is to live in the present and take back the cities to prevent more people from being hurt. After 2 hours, I will lead the army to Chenzhou, but you also know that I don't have many people with me. I can't leave them here, so, Chu Qingyan put her hands behind her back and looked at him sharply. Can I leave Rao Hezhou to General Yun to protect? Yun Feng was stunned. He looked up and met the beautiful and clear eyes in front of him. He gritted his teeth and knelt down again. I will not disappoint you. Chu Qingyan's brows relaxed when she heard this. Very good. Ethereal, give the things to General Yun. Ethereal obeyed and stepped forward. The people behind him carried 2 boxes and opened them. Ethereal said to Yun Feng, this is medicine to deal with the poisonous creatures. Just 1 drop is enough to kill the poisonous creatures. I will leave these to General Yun. Yun Feng subconsciously looked at Chu Qingyan. He did not expect that she had already paved the way for him. These medicine were simply amulets for them. He did not forget the nightmare of the poisonous creatures attacking them. He thanked Chu Qingyan repeatedly. Thank you, General Chu. Chu Qingyan waved her hand. It is all for the people. There is no need to say more. After 2 hours, Yun Feng looked at the mighty army leaving the city. Smoke and dust billowed, but he could still recognize the leader in red. It was so strong and so daunting. General, those people don't even have an official position. Why do we have to listen to them? A young general beside him muttered to him. Yun Feng slapped him and said angrily, who saved you? Who gave us the environment to live in now? If you don't know how to speak, don't say it. If General Chu and the others hear it, I can't protect you. Think about it carefully. If it weren't for His Royal Highness, what would the situation be now? The young general knew that he had said something wrong and did not dare to say more. After experiencing those nightmarish days, Yun Feng felt that he had earned enough to breathe such clean and fresh air again. He was grateful to the King of England. During the treatment, he heard a lot of news. His Royal Highness had led the troops to protect the territory and had achieved many victories, especially against Junlan. The people he sent had recovered half of the cities. If it weren't for the King of England, the country would have been defeated by now. Chu Qingyan, who was on the road, did not know the agitation in Yun Feng's heart. At this time, she was commanding the troops to split into 2. Xiaoqi, come with me to Chenzhou. Fang Lu, you go to Guanfuzhou. Take half of the Lai army with you. Bai Yutang will take the Tiger army and the Leopard army with you. Fang Lu was stunned. This was different from what they had agreed on before. The young princess had changed her mind at the last minute, but he was worried. But Chenzhou is the Lulan army's headquarters. Will it be enough to take these people? Chu Qingyan raised her eyebrows. I don't fight unprepared battles. Don't worry and go. Although Fang Lu was hesitant, he still obeyed her orders. He chose the soldiers and went to the other side of the fork in the road. Huo Ling was puzzled by her arrangement. Young princess, why do we have to split into 2? Wouldn't it be better to concentrate our forces and attack separately? Chu Qingyan shook her head. The accident in Rao Hezhou can be concealed for now. But if the second city is also attacked, they will definitely notice. So, we will attack together and give them a fatal blow when they are unprepared. This will prevent the Lulan kingdom from sending reinforcements. This is the best plan. Also, we have enough people. This was also what she had just thought of. With the experience of dealing with the shaped mustache man and the others, she felt that her human and beast strength were enough to deal with them. She was more worried about Big Ice Cube's side. The Lulan kingdom did not have any outstanding leaders. They were only able to win because of their poison. However, she did not care about poison anymore. So, it was not a problem to defeat Lulan Jun's remaining troops. However, the leader of the Southern Sung army, Pang Huang, was extremely cunning. She was a bit worried. Huo Ling, Ethereal, and the others felt that what the young princess said was very reasonable. They immediately followed her to Chenzhou. At this time, the Lulan army stationed in Chenzhou did not know what was waiting for them. Chapter 1439. By the time Xiao Su received the military report from Rao Hezhou, it was already close to evening. His lips curled into a beautiful arc. At this time, the sky was dark and he was sitting behind the desk. His dark eyes seemed to be glowing. Turan rarely saw his master reveal his emotions when the young princess consort was not around. Thinking that this letter was related to the young princess consort, he couldn't help but ask boldly, did something good happen? Xiao Su put away the letter, his lips still curled up. Ayan has recovered Rao Hezhou. It was a simple sentence, but the amount of information it contained was huge. Turan was stunned. Rao Hezhou. Wasn't that taken by the Lulan army? Based on the young princess consort's speed, she actually took it back in a day. No one else could do this, right? No wonder, Master, you looked so proud. The earth spirit subconsciously swallowed his saliva. The little princess consort was too valiant. Even the Lulan army took 3 to 4 days to break through the city. She was simply killing them in seconds. If Turan knew the scene at that time, even his calm temperament would be shocked. Seeing his subordinate's shocked expression, Xiao Su's mood became even better. Of course, his little fellow was extraordinary. Since that's the case, this prince can't fall behind. Xiao Su lightly knocked on the table, a glint in his silver eyes. Let Lu Guang and the rest speed up. Turan collected his thoughts and immediately responded. It's about time, we should also set off. Xiao Su stood up, slowly smoothed out his battle clothes, and strode out. Turan followed closely behind. When Pang Huang received the news that Xiao Su had already left the city, he smiled thoughtfully and waved his hand. Let's go, follow me to meet the world-renowned war god. An hour later, the two parties met at the bottom of the valley. His Royal Highness, long time no see. He's still so handsome. Pang Huang cupped his hands, his face full of smiles. Xiao Su's expression was light. Your Highness, I trust you've been well since we last met. Pang Huang smiled and waved his hand. Someone brought in a table and a chair and placed it between the two of them. Soon, hot tea and refreshments were served. He raised his hand and said, Lord, please have a seat. The situation is special. Please forgive us for making the Lord stay here. Since the situation is special, there's no need for forgiveness. Xiao Su didn't stand on ceremony. He lifted his clothes and sat down. Pang Huang nodded inwardly. Even he couldn't help but admire such magnanimity. This is the first time I've sat so calmly with your Highness. I can't help but feel a little emotional. Xiao Su glanced at him. If your Highness the Crown Prince didn't make such a big fuss every time you appeared, this prince would welcome you as a guest to the Sichuan. Pang Huang's eyes narrowed. This person was insinuating that he had attacked the Sichuan. However, the coldness in his eyes quickly dissipated and a smile appeared. This prince doesn't want to meet under such circumstances every time. I really have my difficulties. Xiao Su's eyes were still indifferent. He didn't respond to Pang Huang's words. Pang Huang wasn't angry. He had figured out Xiao Su's temperament and knew that he didn't like to beat around the bush. He couldn't help but get straight to the point. This time, I invited the Lord here because I have something important to discuss with you. Your Highness the Crown Prince, there's no harm in speaking. One hid a knife in his smile, the other didn't bat an eyelid. They were both foxes. This prince has also heard of the matter between the Lord and His Majesty the Sichuan. This prince sympathizes with the Lord. He has contributed so much to the Sichuan, but in the end, he has fallen to such a state. Emperors in both ancient and modern times have been heartless. Their ability to turn hostile is more fickle than the weather in June. Pang Huang paused and glanced at the still indifferent Xiao Su. He was slightly surprised, but he continued to speak. The Lord should know that there are no eternal friends or eternal enemies in this world. Perhaps in the past, our positions were opposite, but now is different. Since we have a common enemy, it is better to work together. After all, the enemy of an enemy is a friend. Pang Huang's last sentence was the most important. Xiao Su showed his only emotion. He raised his eyebrows. This prince has been instilled since childhood with the belief that the country is the most important and that this prince must protect the people. Why does your Highness the Crown Prince think that this prince will agree? Pang Huang was not surprised by his answer. If he agreed immediately, then he would not be the Xiao Su he knew. This prince admires your highness' loyalty to the country and the people, but every man for himself. Your highness has done so much for the country and the people. You have put in so much effort, but in the end, what kind of ending did you get? Great merit shakes the ruler. Once the rabbit has outlived its usefulness, the dog will be cooked. Burning the bridge after crossing the river. The people above can casually put a crime on your head, and you will have no way to defend yourself. As he spoke, Pang Huang saw Xiao Su's eyebrows loosen, so he immediately added, Sichuan Emperor is muddle-headed and incompetent. He appointed people based on personal connections. The court under his rule is run amok with corrupt officials, and the atmosphere is foul. If you didn't help him protect the borders, Sichuan would have been gnawed to the bone long ago. So if we work together, this prince can send you to that position. This way, you won't have to work hard for the country while being wary of the emperor's suspicions and schemes. Wouldn't it be better to hold the things you want to protect in the palm of your own hand? This way, you will have fulfilled your belief in serving the country and the people. Xiao Su narrowed his eyes. Then what are the conditions for working together? Perhaps Xiao Su's expression was too calm, so Pang Huang couldn't tell what he was thinking. However, he wasn't worried. He raised his eyes and smiled brightly. There are two options for the Lord to choose from. 1. Sichuan's territory will be divided equally between the two of us. 2. Sichuan will become a vassal state of Nansang and pay tribute every year. What does His Royal Highness think? Divide equally. If this prince remembers correctly, Your Highness the Crown Prince seems to be working with Junlan and Lulan. Xiao Su frowned slightly, as if he didn't trust him. Pang Huang laughed. When his laughter stopped, his eyes were shining. His Royal Highness, how long do you think it will take for the two of us to flatten Lulan and Junlan? You plan to annex the two countries? Xiao Su's eyes were cold. He didn't expect Pang Huang to be so ambitious. Pang Huang chuckled. Why not? The winner is king, and the loser is a bandit. Didn't I just say that there are no eternal enemies or eternal friends in this world? Xiao Su met Pang Huang's gaze, his expression cold. I can't help but admire Your Highness the Crown Prince's eloquence. If it were anyone else, they might have been persuaded by you. The smile on Pang Huang's face froze. He thought that after saying so much, the other party had already agreed. He didn't expect that in the end, he was just toying with him. Xiao Su, what do you mean? It's exactly what you're thinking. Xiao Su, you're so useless. You've been bullied to this extent, but you're still willing to help them clean up their mess. I've never seen someone as stupidly loyal and filial as you. Xiao Su leisurely replied, Your Highness the Crown Prince, provocation is useless against this prince. Moreover, everyone has their own goals. You have no right to judge this prince's actions. Pang Huang couldn't keep the smile on his face any longer. He simply shed all pretenses of cordiality. Xiao Su, do you think you can leave after coming here today? With a wave of his hand, an array of arrows appeared on the mountaintop. They shone with cold light and were aimed at Xiao Su's group. Chapter 1440. Before Pang Huang could smile, Xiao Su, who was standing in front of him, said faintly, You're the only one allowed to prepare a sneak attack. With that, Turin released a signal, and Pang Huang's arrow formation became chaotic. From time to time, arrows fell from the mountain. The entire valley was surrounded. Pang Huang's smile stiffened, and his expression turned cold. Xiao Su, even if you walk out of here today, you won't have a good ending. You're talking about Xiao Ran? Xiao Su chuckled. I forgot to tell you that this prince told him before I left that Crown Prince Pang invited this prince for a chat. In order to ensure this prince's safety, he even sent people to follow me. Otherwise, who do you think would be surrounding the mountain? What? Pang Huang was really shocked. He didn't expect that his plan would be seen through so easily. He didn't even know which part of his plan went wrong. At this time, Xiao Su kindly explained, Your Highness, why do you think your subordinates were able to send the letter into the city so smoothly? If it weren't for this prince's tacit approval, How could the letter reach Xiao Ran's hands? Pang Huang instantly raised his head to look at the pair of calm eyes that could see through people's hearts. It was as if he saw mockery in those eyes. His expression immediately became very ugly. So you knew this prince's plan from the beginning? That's right. Xiao Su admitted, you're a rare opponent. You like to leave a way out for yourself. A crafty rabbit has 3 burrows, and you're like that. So your cooperation is real, but if it doesn't work out, it's also real that you want to take me down. Xiao Ran's move was your second move. If you don't take me down, you want to make me isolated, and I can't have a foothold in Sichuan. Then, I won't be able to cooperate with Xiao Ran to deal with you. In the end, I'll bear the infamy and have nowhere else to go. Maybe I'll still choose to cooperate with you. Of course, at that time, I'll only be at your mercy, and the conditions won't be as good as now. After saying this, Xiao Su looked at the person in front of him with a cold gaze. Your Highness, am I right? Although Pang Huang had done so many bad things, at this moment, Xiao Su admired him. Pang Huang was meticulous and calculated people's hearts. Every step of the way he took, his tricks were endless. If he hadn't been careful and had some understanding of this person, he was afraid that he would have accidentally fallen into his trap. Pang Huang didn't get angry when his thoughts were exposed. Instead, he openly admitted, the Lord is right. I do plan to do so. You are very smart. Although the two of them were enemies, it did not hinder Xiao Su from admiring him. Pang Huang laughed bitterly. But didn't you see through it? Although he said that, Pang Huang's face quickly showed a look of determination. But until the end, who knows who will win? Pang Huang stood up. Xiao Su raised his eyebrows. In the blink of an eye, the table between them cracked. Wood shavings flew everywhere. The two figures moved, and both of them began to fight with their bare hands. Seeing this, the people from both sides immediately joined in the fight. The scene instantly became chaotic. After Xiao Su exchanged a few blows with Pang Huang, he found that not only had his internal energy recovered, it had also increased a lot. He was a little surprised, but this didn't stop him from fighting with all his heart. Xiao Su, aren't you curious why my injuries healed so quickly? While fighting, Pang Huang smiled ambiguously. Oh. This prince is indeed a little curious. Xiao Su followed his words, but the strength of his attacks didn't decrease at all. Pang Huang chuckled. That's because I got some good herbs, and those herbs just happened to come from your Sichuan. Very surprising, right? Xiao Su didn't comment. Seeing his stubborn look, Pang Huang rolled his eyes and continued, do you know that the person you're working with now used to work with me? To tell you the truth, he was the one who got my medicinal herbs. Sowing discord? Xiao Su raised his eyebrows, but compared to this, he was more concerned about how this person knew that he and Xiao Ho had teamed up. After Pang Huang finished speaking, Xiao Su was still indifferent. This made him a little annoyed. Xiao Su, do you still dare to use this kind of person? Xiao Su raised his eyebrows and looked at him. He repeated what Pang Huang had said before. Didn't you say before that there are no eternal friends or eternal enemies in this world? After saying this, their fists collided in midair. Pang Huang's breathing became unstable, and he spat out blood first. He took a few steps back. When he raised his head in disbelief, Xiao Su withdrew his hand and looked at him with his hands behind his back. The two of them were about the same height, but he had the illusion that the other party was looking down on him. He heard Xiao Su say, you lost. Is that so? Pang Huang wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and said disapprovingly, aren't you saying this too early? Xiao Su only smiled and didn't answer. Pang Huang felt that something was wrong, but he didn't show it on his face. The two of them faced each other in the chaotic battle, and in the end, Pang Huang asked the question that had been in his heart all this time. Why won't you agree to cooperate with me? Is it because I schemed against you? But Xiao Su, you should know that in the end, you will still end up like a dog that has outlived its usefulness. A leopard can change its spots, but a leopard can't change its spots. Your emperor will not let you go. Now, my words are still here. As long as you agree to cooperate, I will let bygones be bygones and will not make things difficult for you. I will even share this golden age with you. Xiao Su's gaze was as indifferent as before. Pang Huang, I've said before that everyone has their own beliefs. There are things that they can do and things that they can't do. Although I have disputes with the royal family, it doesn't stop me from protecting this country. If I wanted revenge, I wouldn't choose to do it in this way. When I, Xiao Su, do things in an upright manner, or no one can find fault with me. Pang Huang frowned and wanted to say something more, but he heard Xiao Su say, just now, we were talking about official matters. Now, it's private matters. What? Pang Huang was slightly stunned. Xiao Su's gaze changed. His gaze became cold, with a hint of deterrence. Not long after Ayan left the capital, you sent people to besiege her. You touched my bottom line. Pang Huang chuckled when he heard this, but he put on a fake smile and said, it seems that this is the real reason. I like young General Chu's ability and want to persuade her to follow me. Unfortunately, her temper is the same as yours. She doesn't listen to reason or force. Xiao Su's gaze was cold. You can still laugh now, but not necessarily later. Pang Huang felt that there seemed to be another meaning in his words, but he couldn't figure it out at the moment. He was worried that he was tricking him. Master, the fourth prince's people are all here. Turan quickly walked over to report. Xiao Su nodded. Pang Huang, who was at the side, suddenly felt that something was wrong. He looked around at the two sides who were fighting, and his eyes were filled with surprise. Xiao Su, where are your people? He clearly had tens of thousands of people under his command, but the number of people who appeared here clearly didn't match up. Xiao Su curled his lips and said slowly, counting the time, they're already at the entrance of your barracks. Pang Huang was shocked, and a mouthful of blood gushed out. He had been lured away.